It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, or so it seemed. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur who had revolutionized the electric car industry with Tesla and made headlines with his ambitious plans for Mars, was seated at the sleek conference table in one of his many offices. He was preparing for yet another round of interviews and discussions about the future of humanity. But this time, something was different. Elon had agreed to a special guest appearance on a popular tech podcast, and he had been told that the conversation would be an insightful discussion about innovation, space travel, and the challenges of creating a sustainable future. What he didn't know was that he would meet someone who would leave him awestruck, questioning everything he thought he knew about intelligence and human potential. The door to the conference room opened, and in walked a child, no older than 8 years old, accompanied by a calm woman who introduced herself as Adam Green's mother. Elon, though accustomed to meeting brilliant minds, was taken aback by the sight of the child walking confidently into the room. "Mr. Musk, this is my son, Adam," the woman said. "He's been a fan of your work for years, and he's quite unique." Elon's curiosity was piqued. He extended his hand with a polite smile, but Adam didn't immediately take it. Instead, he stared at Elon with an intensity that made the tech mogul feel strangely uneasy. "Hello, Adam," Elon said, his voice warm but with a touch of skepticism. "Nice to meet you." Adam didn't respond right away, but then, in a calm voice that carried an undeniable confidence, he spoke. "I've read everything about SpaceX, but there's a flaw in your Falcon 9 landing algorithm. It's inefficient when you calculate the final trajectory after the second stage separation. Have you thought about recalibrating the lateral velocity adjustment when the booster is within a certain range of atmospheric pressure?" Elon blinked, a bit taken aback. He had been in some high-level discussions about space travel, but never had a child, one so young, approached him with such precision and knowledge. Well, Elon said, momentarily caught off guard. That's definitely a fascinating observation. We've considered it, but we haven't tested it at that exact range. I'll have to talk to the engineers about it." Adam nodded, his face calm and serene. There was no hint of arrogance or excitement in his tone, just a quiet certainty. The way he spoke was as if he had already solved the problem in his mind, as though this was just another step in an ongoing conversation about the future of space exploration. Elon was used to talking to some of the brightest minds in technology, but this was different. Adam wasn't just a prodigy, he was a genius. The realization hit Elon like a ton of bricks, and for the first time in a long while, he found himself genuinely stunned. Elon motioned for Adam to take a seat, his mind racing. The child's IQ was clearly off the charts, but Elon couldn't help but wonder. How had someone so young acquired such a deep understanding of complex scientific concepts? And more than that, how had a child like Adam come into his life at such a pivotal moment? As the interview began, Elon found himself struggling to stay on topic. Every question he asked seemed to lead to a response from Adam that was not only insightful but left Elon questioning the very fabric of his own knowledge. Elon had spent decades working on solving problems that seemed impossible, yet here was this young boy, offering solutions without hesitation or second thoughts. The discussion quickly moved into the realm of artificial intelligence, a topic that Elon was deeply passionate about. He asked Adam what he thought about the future of AI and its role in humanity's future. Adam's answer was precise, almost eerily so. AI will always be a tool. The key is understanding how to integrate it with human consciousness. It's not enough to just make machines smart. We need to make sure that as machines evolve, humanity evolves with them. Otherwise, we risk losing our sense of purpose. Elon listened, captivated. The simplicity of Adam's words belied the profound wisdom behind them. Elon had always believed in the importance of balancing innovation with humanity's long-term well-being, but Adam seemed to have distilled that idea into a single sentence. "Do you really think people will accept AI like that?" Elon asked, intrigued. "I think the question isn't whether people will accept it," Adam replied, looking Elon in the eyes. "It's whether we can make people see it as a tool for growth, not something to fear. It's about showing them that AI can help us solve problems that we can't solve on our own." Elon's mind was racing, trying to catch up with Adam's every word. Here was a child who understood the world in a way that no adult had yet been able to grasp. But what was even more astonishing was how Adam spoke not with the naivete of youth, but with the confidence of someone who had already seen the future. For the first time in his life, Elon felt like the student in the room, and Adam? He was the teacher. As the interview continued, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with something else, a quiet, nagging feeling that there was more to this child than just intellectual brilliance. What drove Adam? What made him think the way he did? The interview ended, but the conversation lingered in Elon's mind. He had met some incredible minds in his career, but Adam Green? He was different. And now, Elon was facing a question he hadn't expected. Could someone so young really be more intelligent than him? More than that, could Adam's mind hold the key to solving the very problems that Elon had dedicated his life to? Before leaving, Adam turned to Elon, his eyes full of something that wasn't just curiosity. It was understanding, a profound understanding of the future. "I'll see you again, Mr. Musk," Adam said, "when the time is right." And with that, Adam and his mother left the room, leaving Elon to process what had just happened. His thoughts were racing, but one thing was clear. Meeting Adam Green had changed everything. Elon Musk had always prided himself on his ability to think ahead, to see the possibilities before they became reality. But now, for the first time in his life, he was unsure whether he was the one leading the way, or if someone much younger, someone with an intelligence beyond even his own, was about to change the world in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon couldn't shake the encounter with Adam Green. As he sat in his office, surrounded by the usual team of engineers and advisors, his mind wandered back to the 8-year-old prodigy. He replayed their conversation over and over again, trying to understand how someone so young could possess such a vast depth of knowledge. It was one thing to be intellectually gifted. It was another to speak with the wisdom and clarity of someone far beyond their years. Despite all his accomplishments, Elon couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. But not the petty kind. It was a deeper, more thoughtful envy. One that came from recognizing something within Adam that he had never seen before in anyone. This child didn't just have a high IQ. He had an innate understanding of the world that was almost prophetic. Still, there was one thing Elon didn't understand. Who was Adam Green? What was his background? How did he acquire such knowledge? Determined to learn more, Elon decided to dig into Adam's past. As it turned out, Adam's life was as mysterious as his intellect. Adam was born in a small town in Oregon, far removed from the tech hubs of Silicon Valley or the academic circles of Ivy League universities. His mother, Eleanor Green, was a single parent who worked as a high school science teacher. There was nothing extraordinary about her, at least on the surface. But the more Elon read about her, the more he understood that her influence on Adam was profound. Eleanor had always been an unconventional teacher, someone who didn't just focus on textbooks but encouraged her students to think critically, question the status quo, and explore the world around them. She was known for her offbeat teaching methods, which often involved taking her students on field trips to explore science in action, from the depths of the ocean to the farthest reaches of space. Despite her dedication to teaching, Eleanor never pushed her son toward academics. In fact, she often spoke about the importance of creativity and imagination, encouraging Adam to explore his interests without being confined to the boundaries of traditional education. However, Adam's brilliance couldn't be ignored. By the time he was 4, he had taught himself to read, devouring books on everything from quantum physics to the history of human civilization. By the time he was 6, he had already begun solving complex mathematical equations that most university students would struggle to understand. His knowledge wasn't confined to any single subject. He had an insatiable curiosity that drove him to explore everything. What made Adam even more unusual was his lack of interest in fame or recognition. Unlike many child prodigies who sought the spotlight or competed for accolades, Adam was content to stay out of the public eye. He didn't care about being on talk shows or winning awards. All he cared about was solving problems and understanding the world. As Elon read through reports about Adam's early childhood, he found himself captivated by the boy's ability to teach himself complex topics. The more he learned about Adam, the more Elon began to realize that this child wasn't just extraordinary, he was revolutionary. One particular moment from Adam's life stood out. When Adam was just 7, Eleanor had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Adam, despite his young age, took it upon himself to research the disease. He spent countless hours in the library, reading scientific journals and medical studies. In a remarkable twist, Adam discovered an experimental treatment that was still in its early stages but showed promise. Eleanor, desperate for any option, agreed to try it. The treatment worked. Against all odds, Eleanor's cancer went into remission. It wasn't just luck. It was Adam's determination and ability to apply knowledge in real-world situations that made the difference. As Elon read this story, he was both awed and humbled. Adam's ability to understand the world wasn't limited to abstract theories. It was practical, grounded in the real challenges people face every day. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Adam's personality was his reluctance to share his discoveries with the world. Despite his extraordinary mind, he had no interest in accolades, no desire to build an empire or take credit for his achievements. Adam simply wanted to help people. Whether that meant solving a mathematical puzzle, discovering a new scientific principle, or finding a treatment that could save a life. Elon could relate to this in some ways. Like Adam, he had never been motivated by fame or wealth. His driving force had always been the desire to push humanity forward, to explore new frontiers and solve the world's most pressing problems. But there was something different about Adam. It wasn't just about progress. It was about understanding the deeper implications of progress, about ensuring that technology and innovation served humanity, rather than the other way around. Elon found himself thinking about the way Adam had spoken during their meeting. The calm, assured way in which he had addressed the issues surrounding SpaceX's Falcon 9 and the way he had discussed AI. It wasn't just knowledge, it was wisdom. It was as if Adam had already lived through the challenges and triumphs of humanity's future and had come back to share his insights. As Elon finished reading about Adam's early life, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with a growing sense of responsibility. The world was changing, and someone like Adam could play a critical role in shaping the future. But how? And what role would Elon play in this unfolding story? He couldn't help but wonder, was Adam the future of humanity? Or was he simply an anomaly? A rare, beautiful mind that existed to remind the world that there was always more to discover? Elon leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. The answers weren't clear yet, but one thing was certain. The encounter with Adam Green was only the beginning. In the weeks following his encounter with Adam Green, Elon Musk found himself obsessed with the boy's extraordinary intellect. What had begun as a mere curiosity had blossomed into a full-blown fascination. Each time Elon sat in a meeting, discussing his projects at SpaceX or Tesla, he found his thoughts drifting back to Adam's words. The child's insights were unsettling in their depth. How could an 8-year-old have such a comprehensive understanding of the very problems that Elon and his team had spent years trying to solve? Elon couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of competition building inside him. It wasn't jealousy, not in the way most people would think. Elon wasn't threatened by Adam's intelligence. He had faced off against the brightest minds in the world his entire career. What unsettled him was the realization that Adam was light years ahead in a way that no one, not even Elon, had anticipated. What had driven this child to think in such advanced, far-reaching ways? What was his secret? Unable to push these thoughts away, Elon decided to take a step that surprised even him. He reached out to Adam's mother, Eleanor Green, requesting to meet with her. It was an unusual move for Elon. He wasn't the type to seek out families of young geniuses. But something about Adam's potential felt too significant to ignore, and he was determined to understand more about the boy's background. What was driving Adam's intellectual fire? Was it something in his upbringing? Or was there something deeper? Something that Elon couldn't see? The meeting was set in the same conference room where he had first met Adam. This time, Elon was not just meeting a child prodigy. He was meeting the woman who had raised him. Eleanor Green entered the room with the same calm demeanor as her son, her presence dignified but unassuming. Elon rose from his seat to greet her, offering a smile that conveyed his respect, though his mind was focused on the questions that weighed heavily on him. "Thank you for meeting with me, Eleanor," Elon said, gesturing for her to take a seat. "It's my pleasure, Mr. Musk," Eleanor replied with a smile. "Adam speaks highly of you." "I must admit," Elon began, "I've been thinking a lot about Adam, his insights into space, artificial intelligence, the way he sees the world. It's beyond anything I've encountered in my career. It's almost unsettling. I've been wondering, how did he come to be this way?" Eleanor seemed to take a deep breath, her expression thoughtful. She glanced toward the window as if choosing her words carefully. "Adam has always been different, from the moment he was born," she said slowly. "I didn't push him to be brilliant. I've always believed that the mind can only grow when it is free to explore. But with Adam, it was as though he was born knowing things." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "You mean he didn't need to be taught?" Eleanor shook her head. "Not in the traditional sense. Of course, we had teachers, but Adam always learned at his own pace. At age 4, he started reading books that most adults would struggle to understand. He would memorize entire sections of them, then talk about them in ways that didn't make sense for someone his age. But it wasn't just about raw knowledge. It was about how he applied it." Elon's mind raced. This child, this 8-year-old, had an understanding of complex subjects, things that took him decades of research and hands-on experience to learn. Yet Adam seemed to understand them intuitively. It was as though he had already surpassed the typical human learning process. Eleanor continued, "What's more, he's not driven by recognition or wealth. His greatest desire is to understand the world, not to control it. He sees the problems humanity faces, and instead of following the paths most people take, he looks for new ones. He sees solutions in places others overlook." Elon absorbed her words, sensing that Eleanor's perspective on her son was far more grounded than his own. He had spent so many years trying to push the boundaries of technology and innovation, always looking for the next big breakthrough. But Adam's approach, Eleanor's approach, seemed to suggest that there was a different way. What if the true key to solving humanity's most pressing problems wasn't about forcing the world into a new direction, but rather understanding its patterns and the natural way forward? A shift began to take place in Elon's mind. It was subtle at first, but the idea that Adam's mind was not simply a collection of brilliant facts, but rather a new type of intelligence, a deeper understanding of interconnected systems, started to settle in. "I have to ask," Elon said carefully, "has Adam always been like this? Was there a moment, a breakthrough, that sparked this ability to see the world differently?" Eleanor hesitated for a moment, as if debating how much to reveal. She met Elon's gaze, her eyes heavy with emotion. "I told you Adam's love for learning came naturally, but there was a pivotal moment that changed everything. It happened when Adam was just 6. Elon leaned in, fully focused. "What happened?" "Adam's ability to understand complex concepts was extraordinary," Eleanor said, her voice tightening slightly. "But when I was diagnosed with cancer, he didn't just retreat into his books. He didn't just learn about the disease. He became the disease in his mind. He understood the process, the cell mutations, the treatment options. He predicted, before any doctor did, the trajectory of my condition." She paused, as though the memory pained her. "That's when I realized Adam wasn't just a brilliant boy. He was a force of nature. And in many ways, he's carried that burden ever since. He understands the world on a level most of us can't. But it's not always a gift. It can be a curse." Elon nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. This was no longer just about a child with exceptional intelligence. It was about a child who saw the world and its problems in ways that most people, no matter how smart, simply couldn't. The implications of that were enormous. But just as Elon was beginning to understand the magnitude of Adam's abilities, something unexpected happened. Elon's phone buzzed, interrupting the conversation. He glanced down at the screen, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the alert. SpaceX's latest rocket had failed its landing procedure. The anomaly Adam had pointed out in their previous conversation, the one that Elon had brushed off, had just become a reality. It seemed that Adam was right. And now, Elon was faced with the daunting realization that his own pride and assumptions had blinded him to something far more important. The future was here, and it was looking at him through the eyes of an 8-year-old. The failure of the SpaceX rocket was a blow, But it was more than just a setback. It was a wake-up call. Elon spent the following days analyzing the malfunction in excruciating detail. His engineers worked tirelessly to figure out what had gone wrong, but despite their best efforts, the cause remained elusive. That night, as he sat in his office, staring at the same images and data over and over, something unexpected happened. His mind returned to the conversation he'd had with Adam Green. Why didn't I listen to him? Elon muttered aloud, his fingers tapping impatiently on the desk. Adam's words about the physics of landing were still fresh in his memory. He had suggested a more radical approach, something that Elon had dismissed as too unconventional. But now, as he examined the data again, he realized that Adam might have been right all along. He leaned back in his chair, feeling a strange sense of urgency. The answer was out there, but it wasn't just in the numbers. It was in the way Adam had approached the problem. The boy wasn't just applying textbook knowledge. He was seeing things from an entirely different perspective. And that perspective was what Elon needed. For the first time in years, Elon felt truly uncertain. His usual confidence, the relentless drive that had propelled him through years of failures and successes alike, was slipping. He realized that he couldn't solve this on his own. Not this time. And perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't meant to. Without wasting another second, he grabbed his phone and dialed Eleanor Green's number. The line rang for what felt like an eternity before she answered. "Elon," she said, her voice calm but curious. "Is everything okay?" "I need to talk to Adam," Elon said, his voice more urgent than he had intended. "I think he might be able to help." There was a brief pause on the other end. Eleanor's response was slow, but understanding. "I'll let him know," she said, before hanging up. Minutes later, Elon received a call from a number he didn't recognize. It was Adam's voice on the other end, soft but steady. "Mr. Musk," Adam said, "you wanted to speak to me?" Elon took a breath, trying to steady his nerves. "Adam, I've been thinking a lot about what you said during our last meeting. You mentioned a solution to our landing problem at SpaceX. Well, the rocket just failed again, and I've realized that you might be the only one who can help us fix it. Can you meet with me?" There was a slight pause on the line, as though Adam was contemplating his response. "I'd like to help, Mr. Musk, but I think it's going to take more than just me. It's going to take a shift in the way everyone thinks about space travel." Elon frowned, his mind already racing. "A shift? What do you mean?" "You'll see soon enough," Adam replied cryptically. "Let's just say that the future of space exploration isn't about faster rockets or better technology. It's about understanding the bigger picture. The question isn't whether we can land a rocket. It's whether we truly understand what we're doing and why." Elon felt a shiver run down his spine. Adam's words were both profound and unsettling. He had spent his entire career pushing boundaries, seeking the next big technological leap. But now, he was faced with a child who seemed to understand the very essence of progress in a way that transcended technology itself. "You'll need to trust me," Adam said, almost as if reading Elon's mind. "I know you're used to doing things your way, but this time, we need to look beyond the conventional methods. And that means you'll have to trust that there are things you can't explain yet, things that I can." The line went silent for a moment, and Elon could hear the faint hum of machinery in the background, the sound of his mind working overtime. Trust. It wasn't something Elon gave lightly. But if he was honest with himself, he knew that Adam had already proven that he saw things in ways that no one else could. "All right," Elon said, making a snap decision. "I'll meet you." "Where?" Adam's voice remained calm, almost serene. "I'll send you the coordinates. Be there in an hour." An hour later, Elon found himself standing in front of a small, inconspicuous building on the outskirts of Palo Alto. He had no idea what to expect. The entire situation felt surreal. An 8-year-old genius asking him to follow him into uncharted territory. Yet here he was, on the edge of something that felt as monumental as anything he had ever accomplished. He approached the door and knocked lightly. Almost immediately, it creaked open, revealing Adam standing inside. There was no sign of fear or hesitation in the boy's eyes. He looked calm, almost as though he had been expecting Elon all along. "You came," Adam said, stepping aside to let Elon in. "Good." There's something I need to show you. Elon followed Adam down a dimly lit hallway, his curiosity building with each step. They entered a room at the end of the hall, and as the door swung open, Elon's jaw dropped. The room was filled with a mixture of high-tech equipment and a strange, makeshift laboratory that Elon had never seen before. There were holographic displays, stacks of books on quantum mechanics and theoretical physics, and scribbled notes pinned to every wall. "What is all this?" Elon asked, his voice filled with awe. "This," Adam said, pointing to the various displays, "is a new way to think about the challenges we face in space exploration. It's not just about getting to Mars or building reusable rockets. It's about understanding the fabric of the universe itself." Elon walked deeper into the room, his mind racing. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with SpaceX?" Adam smiled faintly. "Everything." Elon stood in the middle of Adam's makeshift lab, surrounded by the hum of unfamiliar machinery and the quiet scribblings of a child who, somehow, seemed to understand the very essence of the universe. It was a strange moment, one where the boundary between genius and madness seemed to blur. Adam, just 8 years old, had drawn up plans and concepts that Elon himself had never considered, much less dared to explore. Adam was standing beside a large holographic display, his small fingers manipulating the floating images with a grace that betrayed his age. "This is where you're going wrong, Mr. Musk," Adam said, his tone calm, almost soothing. Elon, still processing the shock of everything, tried to focus on the display. "I'm not sure I follow. What exactly do you mean?" he asked, his voice more hesitant than he would have liked. Adam didn't respond directly at first. Instead, he tapped a few more controls, and the display shifted to reveal a schematic of a rocket, one that looked like nothing Elon had ever seen. It wasn't a typical rocket design. It was far more compact, with intricate propulsion systems that appeared to bypass traditional forms of fuel. It was almost as if Adam had found a way to fold space itself. "I've been thinking about the way you approach space travel," Adam continued, his voice echoing slightly in the sterile lab. "You see the problem in terms of rockets and fuel, launch and landing. But that's not the problem at all. The problem is that you're trying to fight gravity, to push against the natural laws of physics. But what if gravity isn't the enemy?" Elon blinked, his mind struggling to keep up. "What do you mean?" "Gravity is the obstacle we need to overcome if we want to colonize other planets." Adam turned to face him, his eyes sharp and intense. "Gravity isn't the enemy. It's the way we've been thinking about it that's wrong. You've been fighting the wrong battle." A chill ran down Elon's spine as he listened to Adam speak. The boy wasn't just talking about theoretical physics or abstract ideas. He was talking about the very way Elon had structured his life's work. Everything he had dedicated himself to, everything he had achieved at SpaceX, could it all have been based on a flawed understanding? Was it possible that the key to the next phase of humanity's exploration of space lay not in pushing against nature, but in understanding it at its most fundamental level? As the thought crept into his mind, a sense of disbelief gripped him. Adam was right. Elon's entire life, his mission to bring humans to Mars, had been based on a one-dimensional approach to physics, one that treated gravity as something to be overcome rather than something to be understood. "But how do we use gravity?" Elon finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How do we stop thinking of it as the enemy?" Adam's smile was faint but knowing. "The answer is simple. You don't stop thinking of it as the enemy. You start thinking of it as an ally." The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Elon, who had spent years cultivating his genius and solving seemingly insurmountable problems, suddenly felt like he had been playing in the shallow end all along. He had never truly questioned the fundamental rules that had guided his success. He had built his entire empire on the idea that the obstacles we face in space travel could be overcome with enough ingenuity and willpower. But now, Adam was suggesting something that seemed almost too radical to accept. Could this really be the breakthrough Elon had been searching for? For the first time in years, Elon felt the walls around his own confidence begin to crumble. The realization that his way of thinking had limits that he hadn't even seen before, was a blow to his ego. It wasn't the failure of the rocket that shook him. It was the profound shift in his worldview that Adam had brought to light. In that moment, Elon understood that this wasn't just about a rocket design or solving a problem at SpaceX. It was about a new way of seeing the universe. Adam wasn't just a boy with extraordinary intelligence. He was a harbinger of a new understanding, one that could reshape everything Elon had believed to be true. But the weight of that realization brought with it something even more unsettling. Could Elon, a man who had shaped his entire life around his own vision of the future, accept that there was a new and better way? Could he allow himself to be humbled by an 8-year-old child? Before Elon could answer his own question, he felt a sudden shift in the room's atmosphere. Adam's demeanor had changed. The boy's face, once calm and confident, now seemed almost weary. "Mr. Musk," Adam said softly, his voice barely audible, "I know you don't want to hear this, but this journey you're on, it's not just about building rockets anymore. It's about humanity's future, yes, but it's about something deeper. You can't rush it. You can't force it." Elon's heart skipped a beat. There was something heavy in Adam's words, something unspoken. It was as though Adam wasn't just warning him about the dangers of pushing too hard in the pursuit of progress. He was warning him about his own humanity. "I'm listening," Elon said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Adam's eyes softened, and for the first time, he seemed to show a glimpse of something other than intellect, something that could only be described as empathy. "You're looking at the future, Mr. Musk, but you're forgetting to live in the present. The world won't wait for you to catch up. You need to start thinking about what really matters." Elon swallowed hard, the words sinking in deeper than he had expected. This wasn't just about science or technology. It was about life itself. And in that moment, Elon Musk realized that the most important journey of all wasn't the one to Mars. It was the journey inside himself. Suddenly, everything Adam had said started to fall into place. The journey wasn't just about solving problems. It was about understanding that no matter how far humanity reached, it was still part of something much larger, something far beyond the realms of rockets, companies, and even planets. And as Elon stood there, facing a child who had unlocked a truth he had spent his life searching for, he understood that his own future had just shifted in a way he could never have predicted. The days following his meeting with Adam Green were unlike anything Elon Musk had ever experienced. He had come to the lab hoping for a quick solution to a technical problem, a way to fix the issues plaguing SpaceX's rocket launches. But what he walked away with was so much more. A paradigm shift, a deeper understanding, and, perhaps most jarring of all, a sense of vulnerability he wasn't accustomed to. Elon had spent his career defying the odds, pushing boundaries, and rewriting the rulebook on what was possible. He had been lauded as a visionary, a man whose ambition and intellect would change the course of humanity. But in the quiet of his own thoughts, after Adam had shared his groundbreaking insights, Elon found himself questioning everything. Had he been so focused on pushing forward, so obsessed with the future, that he had neglected the very foundation upon which all progress was built? The weight of the question stayed with him, lingering in the corners of his mind as he returned to SpaceX. For the first time, he looked at his projects not with the eyes of a CEO or an engineer, but as a man who had been given a glimpse into something far more profound. And it wasn't just about rockets or Mars anymore. It was about life, purpose, and the journey that lay ahead. Sitting at his desk, Elon stared at the vast expanse of space visible through the office window. It was a sight he had seen countless times before, but today, it felt different. Today, the stars no longer seemed like distant, unreachable points of light. Today, they felt like a reflection of something much closer. The future. Elon reached for his phone and dialed Eleanor Green's number. He had been silent about his meeting with Adam for days, but now, it felt like the right moment to share. The right moment to begin processing everything he had learned. "Eleanor," Elon said when she picked up, "I need to talk to you." "About Adam?" There was a pause on the other end before Eleanor spoke. "I assume it went well?" Elon let out a soft laugh, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "You could say that. It was more than I expected. Adam has this way of seeing the world, of seeing space exploration, that's completely different from anything I've ever considered. It's as if he's unlocked something that I've been blind to my entire life." Eleanor listened intently as Elon recounted the meeting in Adam's lab, the designs he had seen, and the profound insights the young boy had shared. As Elon spoke, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He had come into the conversation expecting to solve a technical problem. Instead, he had been forced to confront a much bigger truth. He had been so focused on his ambition, his dream of reaching Mars, that he had failed to see the importance of the journey itself. "Do you think you can incorporate what he said into SpaceX's plans?" Eleanor asked, her voice calm but filled with curiosity. "I don't know," Elon admitted, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "But I think the answer lies somewhere in what Adam said. It's not just about technology. It's about understanding the universe at a deeper level. If we keep trying to fight gravity, to push against the natural order of things, we'll never get where we want to go. But if we learn to work with it, to understand it well, that's where the real breakthrough lies." Eleanor was silent for a moment. "You're going to need time to process all of this," she said softly. "And it's okay if you don't have all the answers right now. Sometimes, the journey itself is more important than the destination." Elon's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. For years, he had been fixated on reaching the stars, on bringing humanity to Mars. But now, he wasn't sure that was the true goal. Perhaps the real goal was something much deeper, something that couldn't be measured in milestones or rocket launches. He looked out the window again, this time with a new understanding. The future was no longer just a distant point on the horizon. It was here, in the present moment. It was in the questions he had yet to answer, the paths he had yet to explore. It was in the uncertainty, the discomfort, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The next few weeks passed in a blur of reflection, meetings, and recalibration. Elon continued to meet with Adam, discussing the young boy's unconventional ideas, trying to understand the principles behind them. SpaceX's engineers, though initially skeptical, began to see the value in exploring Adam's insights, even if they didn't fully understand them yet. Slowly but surely, the company started to pivot, opening its mind to new possibilities. Elon made a public statement about a shift in the company's direction, focusing not just on rockets and Mars, but on redefining humanity's relationship with space itself. He didn't go into details, but he hinted at the profound change SpaceX was about to undergo. And while there was resistance from some corners, there was also an undeniable sense of excitement. The idea of working with gravity, instead of against it, ignited imaginations, and the possibilities seemed endless. But it wasn't just SpaceX that was changing. Elon, too, was evolving. The relentless drive that had once defined him now had a new purpose. He began to listen more, really listen, not just to the data, but to the people around him. He spent more time with his children, appreciating the simple joys of life that he had so often overlooked in his pursuit of greatness. He started to look beyond the boundaries of his own ambitions and toward the collective good. The lessons Adam had taught him were far more profound than any scientific breakthrough. It was a reminder that true progress wasn't just about technology. It was about understanding ourselves, our place in the universe, and our responsibility to each other. In the end, Elon Musk had discovered that the greatest journey wasn't to Mars, or even to the stars. It was the journey of understanding and growth, the willingness to change and adapt in the face of new knowledge. And for the first time in years, Elon felt at peace with the uncertainty of the future. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it was full of potential he had never imagined before. And as he stood on the precipice of this new chapter in his life, Elon Musk knew one thing for sure. The future was no longer just about the technology. It was about humanity's ability to evolve, to question, and to grow. And that, above all else, was the most important thing of all. As the days turned into weeks, Elon Musk found himself standing at the crossroads of two futures. One he had meticulously crafted for years, and one that had been thrust upon him by an 8-year-old boy with the mind of a genius. The idea of working with gravity rather than against it, the possibility of fundamentally altering SpaceX's approach to space travel, lingered in Elon's thoughts. He knew, deep down, that Adam's insights weren't just theoretical, they were transformative. Yet, the magnitude of what Adam had suggested left Elon with a profound sense of uncertainty. Was he truly ready to abandon everything he had worked for, everything he had achieved, to follow this new path? Could he take such a radical leap of faith, especially when the world expected nothing less than Mars and the stars? It was early one morning when Elon received a call that made him realize just how far-reaching the consequences of his decision would be. "Mr. Musk," the voice on the other end of the line said, "we need to talk. It's urgent." Elon recognized the voice instantly. It was from one of SpaceX's top engineers, Mark, who had been working with him on several key projects. "What's going on, Mark?" Elon asked, his mind still foggy from the previous night's reflections. "It's the new designs," Mark replied, his tone thick with concern. "Some of the engineers have started to question the direction we're going. The idea of altering our approach to gravity, it's unsettling to a lot of people. They're worried about what it means for the future of the company. They think we're taking too big of a risk." Elon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had expected some pushback, but hearing it from Mark, someone he had always trusted, stung. "And what do you think, Mark? Do you think it's a risk we shouldn't take?" There was a long pause on the line. When Mark finally spoke again, his voice was quieter, more measured. "I don't know, Elon. Honestly, I'm torn. It's unlike anything we've ever done, and I know you've always pushed us to break barriers. But this feels like we're changing the rules in ways we don't fully understand." Elon's mind raced as he sat at his desk, staring out the window. The gravity of the situation was starting to weigh on him. He had always believed in pushing the limits of possibility, in challenging conventional wisdom. But now, for the first time, he was faced with a decision that might fundamentally alter the course of everything he had worked toward. "Mark," Elon said, his voice firm, "I know it's a leap, but I think it's one we have to take. If we're going to change the world, we can't just keep doing the same thing. We need to rethink everything we know, and maybe this is the moment to do it." There was silence on the other end of the line before Mark finally spoke. "All right, Elon. If you're in, I'm in. But we need to move carefully. This could change everything." Elon felt a sense of relief wash over him, even as the weight of the decision continued to press down. He had just made a choice that would send ripples throughout SpaceX, his companies, and possibly the entire aerospace industry. But deep down, he knew it was the right one. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Elon spent hours with his team, exploring the concepts Adam had introduced. The more they delved into the idea of working with gravity, of using its natural forces rather than opposing them, the more excited they became. It was like opening a door to a whole new world of possibilities. But there was still much work to be done, and the road ahead was far from smooth. As SpaceX began to shift its focus, Adam continued to be a guiding presence. Though he was only 8, his understanding of space, physics, and engineering far surpassed that of anyone Elon had ever met. Adam became an integral part of the team, providing insights and ideas that seemed to come from a mind far beyond his years. But the questions continued to loom over Elon's decisions. Was this truly the right path? Could a company built on the foundation of rockets and fuel be reshaped so completely? And would the world ever accept such a radical change in the approach to space travel? One evening, after another long day of meetings and brainstorming sessions, Elon found himself alone in the office. The glow of the computer screen illuminated his face, but his thoughts were far from the designs in front of him. He looked at the clock. It was late, but he wasn't tired. Not in the way he used to be, at least. His mind was alive with possibility, filled with the energy of something new. As he sat there, contemplating the road ahead, he thought back to his conversation with Adam. The boy's words echoed in his mind. You need to start thinking about what really matters. Elon had always been driven by ambition, by the desire to achieve the impossible. But now, for the first time in his life, he realized that the journey was just as important as the destination. It wasn't enough to reach Mars if they didn't understand the true nature of space and the universe. It wasn't enough to build a future in the stars if humanity itself wasn't ready to embrace the lessons that came with it. With a deep breath, Elon closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. He had a long road ahead of him, filled with uncertainty and challenges. But now, more than ever, he understood that the true measure of progress wasn't in how fast they reached the stars. It was in how they got there, and in the lessons they learned along the way. He smiled to himself, a feeling of peace settling over him. Adam had shown him that the future wasn't just about rockets or technology. It was about understanding the very forces that shaped the universe and using that knowledge to create a future where humanity could thrive. And that was a future worth pursuing. As Elon stood up from his desk and walked toward the door, he knew one thing for sure. The unseen path that lay ahead was the one that would truly lead to the stars. As the weeks passed, the impact of Elon Musk's decision to pursue Adam Green's groundbreaking approach began to ripple outward. The engineers at SpaceX, initially skeptical, were now fully immersed in the new direction. The research team started to explore gravitational dynamics in ways they never had before. What had once been a purely theoretical discussion was now becoming a viable solution for the future of space travel. Yet, the world was watching. And not just the tech world, not just the aerospace industry. Elon Musk's every move had global significance. What was SpaceX doing? Was this just another one of Elon's audacious, visionary ideas, or was there something more? Could this young boy, Adam Green, really hold the key to the future of space travel? The ripple effect wasn't limited to SpaceX. News outlets began to pick up on the story, with headlines ranging from the incredulous to the curious. Elon Musk, the tech mogul, meets 8-year-old boy who is changing the future of space. SpaceX to abandon rocket propulsion? Elon Musk's shift in focus sparks major debate. Skeptics and enthusiasts alike debated on every platform, from social media to roundtable discussions in newsrooms. Would this radical new direction succeed, or would it end in failure? Elon had always been used to the spotlight, but this time, it felt different. The pressure was mounting, not only because of his reputation, but because the stakes were higher than ever. The world was watching to see if he could transform SpaceX into something far greater than rockets and Mars. Could it become a beacon of hope for humanity, showing that space travel was just one part of a much larger, interconnected vision? Amidst the noise of public opinion, Elon found solace in moments of reflection. He would spend quiet evenings in his office, thinking about Adam's brilliant insights, the ideas he had shared. Adam wasn't just a child with extraordinary intellect. He was a reminder of what it meant to challenge the status quo, what it meant to see the world not as it was, but as it could be. Late one night, after a particularly grueling board meeting, Elon called Adam's mother, Eleanor. It had been a few days since they last spoke, and he felt the need to connect. Adam's presence in his life had been nothing short of transformative, and he needed to hear her perspective on everything that had unfolded. Eleanor, Elon began, his voice tired but purposeful. I just wanted to thank you for everything Adam has brought into my life, into SpaceX. This journey is bigger than anything I could have imagined, but I can't help but feel like we're standing on the edge of something that could change everything. I just don't know if we're ready for it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Eleanor's voice was calm but full of understanding. Elon, I think you're asking the right questions, but sometimes being ready isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to walk into the unknown. Adam doesn't have all the answers either, but he believes that this is the right path. And I think, at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Elon was quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in. He had always been a man of action, quick to make decisions and push forward. But now, he was learning the power of patience, the importance of embracing uncertainty and allowing things to unfold in their own time. Thank you, Eleanor, he said finally. I needed to hear that. As the conversation ended, Elon found himself feeling more resolute than ever. It wasn't about having every detail figured out. It was about trusting the process, and more importantly, trusting the people who were a part of that process. Adam had trusted him with his vision, and it was time for Elon to do the same, to trust in the unknown and in the possibility that the future might look nothing like the past. The next few days brought a flurry of meetings, strategy sessions, and design reviews as SpaceX's teams worked to turn Adam's insights into actionable steps. The transition wasn't easy. The engineers struggled to understand the abstract nature of the new ideas, and some even doubted their feasibility. But as they dug deeper, exploring new concepts like gravitational manipulation and alternative propulsion systems, a sense of excitement began to build. Elon didn't stop pushing. He would meet with his engineers in the mornings, reviewing new designs and iterating on them. Then, in the evenings, he would spend time with Adam, often brainstorming and working through challenges. The contrast between the child's unshakable optimism and the engineer's pragmatic skepticism was striking. Adam, with his youthful enthusiasm, had the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. And that energy was contagious. It wasn't long before Elon began to notice something else, something that had always been at the heart of his own success. The team at SpaceX was coming together in a way that had never happened before. The usual divisions, between departments, between leaders and subordinates, were starting to dissolve. People weren't just working on a project anymore. They were working toward a vision of something far beyond rockets, beyond Mars, beyond the technological feats that had defined Elon's career up until now. As the weeks went on, the designs began to take shape. New propulsion systems were tested in simulations. New theories about gravitational dynamics were put into practice. Though the results were still in their infancy, there was a palpable sense that something monumental was happening. And all of it, in some strange and unexpected way, was rooted in the mind of an 8-year-old boy. The world continued to watch with bated breath, and as the media coverage expanded, Elon's story began to shift. No longer was he just the visionary behind Tesla and SpaceX. Now, he was a man who had found a new purpose, a man willing to step off the beaten path and follow the unknown, wherever it might lead. But despite the progress, Elon knew that the hardest part was still to come. The challenges ahead would be monumental. They weren't just fighting to change the future of space travel. They were fighting to change the way humanity viewed its place in the universe. And that was no small task. As he stood in front of his team one evening, looking out at the faces of the engineers, scientists, and innovators who had come together for this bold new venture, Elon felt the weight of the journey ahead. But for the first time in a long while, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't even uncertain. He was ready. The ripple effect that had started with a single meeting between him and Adam Green had become a tidal wave, a force that was sweeping across the world, changing everything in its path. And Elon knew that this was just the beginning. The days blurred together as SpaceX's team worked tirelessly to integrate Adam's ideas into their development processes. What had begun as a conceptual discussion around gravitational manipulation had now turned into something real. The simulations were improving, the designs were evolving, and the question was no longer if they could do this, but how soon. Elon was no stranger to intense work schedules. He thrived on the pressure, the challenge of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But this was different. The stakes were higher. If they failed, it wouldn't just be another setback in the tech world. It could be a fundamental shift in how humanity approached space exploration. The world was watching, and the future was uncertain. One early morning, after a long night of reviewing simulations, Elon stood outside his office, looking out at the vast horizon. The sun was still low, casting a warm glow over the landscape. He thought about how far SpaceX had come. The Falcon rockets had been a triumph. The Dragon spacecraft, a revolution. But this new path, this unknown path, was something completely different. It wasn't just about space travel anymore. It was about understanding the very forces that govern the universe itself. Mr. Musk. Elon turned around to see Mark, the chief engineer, approaching him. Mark's face was worn with exhaustion, but there was a spark in his eyes that Elon recognized, excitement. "I think we're getting close," Mark said, his voice low, almost reverential. "The simulations we ran last night are showing promising results. If we tweak the gravity field generators just a little bit more, we might be able to create a sustainable gravitational shift. It's working." Elon's heart quickened. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. After months of experimenting, theorizing, and designing, they were on the verge of something that could change everything. But despite the excitement, Elon couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. This was uncharted territory. They were stepping into a void, an unknown future where anything was possible, but so much could go wrong. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice steady, but with an undercurrent of anticipation. "We move forward with the next phase. But keep the team tight. We can't afford any missteps." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "Understood. I'll get the teams ready for the next round of tests." As Mark walked away, Elon stood there for a moment, deep in thought. The magnitude of what they were about to attempt hit him like a wave. The pressure was immense, but there was no turning back. This was the future. This was what Adam had seen from the start. The future of space travel wasn't just about rockets and propulsion. It was about understanding gravity, about working with the very forces that govern the cosmos. That evening, Adam was in the lab, surrounded by engineers who had come to respect his intellect despite his age. The child genius, with his piercing blue eyes and intense focus, was quickly becoming an integral part of the SpaceX team. Elon found himself in awe of the young boy's ability to grasp complex concepts that most adults struggled with. It was as if Adam had an innate understanding of the universe, a gift that few could comprehend, but many would soon come to recognize. "Adam," Elon said, walking into the lab with a determined look on his face. "We're moving forward. The team is ready. We're about to test this gravity shift concept for real." Adam turned his head, his face lighting up with a mix of excitement and confidence. "I knew it," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had been sure of the outcome from the very beginning. "It's going to work. I can feel it." Elon smiled, impressed by the boy's conviction. "You've always had more faith in this than anyone else. I have to admit, I was skeptical at first. But now, I believe you were right." Adam's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Elon. "The thing is, Mr. Musk, belief isn't enough. You have to see it. You have to understand it. That's why we're here, to understand the universe, to bend it to our will." It was a bold statement, and one that struck a chord deep within Elon. For all his years of striving for greatness, he realized that he had never quite understood the universe in the way Adam did. The young boy had a vision, an understanding that transcended conventional thinking. It was both humbling and inspiring. As the team prepared for the test, the atmosphere in the lab became charged with anticipation. Every engineer, every scientist, every technician who had worked on this project knew that they were on the edge of something unprecedented. The gravity field generators, built from the ground up using Adam's principles, were ready for their first trial. Elon stood by the control console, watching as the engineers initiated the sequence. The countdown began, and the room fell into a tense silence. As the final seconds ticked away, a low hum filled the room. The gravitational shift was being initiated. For a moment, there was nothing. A stillness in the air, a quiet that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, the room seemed to pulse. The walls vibrated slightly, and the ground beneath their feet shifted. It was subtle at first, but it was there. Something had changed. The gravity had been altered, if only slightly, but it was enough to send a wave of excitement through the room. "It's working," Mark whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's really working." The team erupted into applause, but Elon stood motionless, his gaze fixed on Adam. The boy had been right all along. This wasn't just another test. This was the beginning of something that could alter humanity's understanding of space, time, and the very fabric of the universe. Elon felt a sense of awe wash over him. They had stepped into the void, and now they were beginning to see the outlines of a new reality. This was more than just a breakthrough in technology. It was a leap forward for all of humanity. As the excitement died down, Elon walked over to Adam, who was quietly observing the results with a serene expression. "You were right, Adam," Elon said softly. "This changes everything." Adam turned to face him, his eyes gleaming with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where they were headed. "It's just the beginning, Mr. Musk. The void is vast, and we have only just started to explore it." Elon smiled, a sense of peace settling over him. The road ahead would be difficult, uncertain, and filled with challenges. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid. Because with Adam by his side, he knew they were on the cusp of something extraordinary. The moment the news broke, the world went into a frenzy. What had begun as a quiet experiment in the heart of SpaceX had now become the center of global conversation. Elon Musk and his company had unveiled a new, unprecedented approach to space travel, a gravitational manipulation system that was already showing promising results. It wasn't just a breakthrough in technology. It was a paradigm shift, one that challenged the very nature of how humanity viewed space. The media coverage was overwhelming. Headlines screamed in every direction: Elon Musk's new era in space travel, SpaceX's gravitational breakthrough shakes the tech world, and, most provocatively, an 8-year-old's vision might just change the future of space. The latter had caught the public's attention the most. Adam Green, the child prodigy with an IQ higher than even Elon's, had become the focal point of the story. The world was fixated on how this brilliant young boy had inspired one of the most influential men on the planet to completely rethink space travel. News anchors speculated endlessly about his abilities, his background, and whether this young genius could truly lead humanity into the next chapter of its journey to the stars. Elon had grown used to media attention, but this was something else. People weren't just talking about his companies or his ambitions. They were talking about a child who had, somehow, unlocked a new understanding of the universe. It wasn't easy for Elon to relinquish the spotlight, but the truth was undeniable. Adam was the spark that had lit this fire, and it was burning brighter than anything Elon had ever imagined. Behind closed doors, however, things weren't as smooth as the media made it seem. There were skeptics, especially among the scientific community. Some questioned the validity of the results. Others accused SpaceX of jumping to conclusions, of rushing a technology that was still far from being proven. SpaceX was used to critics, but now, the critics weren't just talking about rockets. They were talking about the very foundation of their entire approach to space exploration. During a private meeting at SpaceX headquarters, Elon found himself facing some of the most vocal critics. The room was tense as engineers and scientists presented data that pointed to inconsistencies in the latest simulations. "We're not saying the technology isn't groundbreaking," one of the lead engineers said, glancing at the screens in front of him. "But we need more time. These results are preliminary at best. We can't risk moving forward without further testing. It's too dangerous." Elon, who had always pushed the boundaries of technology without hesitation, felt a flicker of doubt. The pressure was mounting, not just from the outside world, but from within his own team. "How much more time do you need?" he asked, his voice firm but not without concern. "We need at least 6 months, the engineer responded. "We can't afford to rush something like this. If we're wrong, we could lose everything." Elon's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. 6 months. That was a long time to delay, especially with the eyes of the world on them. But he knew better than anyone that SpaceX had never been about taking half measures. They had always been willing to take risks, to push forward even when the odds seemed impossible. "I'll take it into consideration," Elon said finally, standing up. "But remember, time waits for no one. We can't afford to fall behind." As the meeting ended and the room emptied, Elon stood alone for a moment, staring at the digital projections on the walls. The technology was real, that much was certain. But the question was, how could they move forward without risking everything? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. Turning, Elon saw Adam standing in the doorway, his expression serious. The boy had been quiet during the meeting, observing from the back of the room. "Mr. Musk," Adam said, walking toward him, "you're thinking too much." Elon smiled wryly. "Is that so?" Adam nodded. "You can't let fear stop you. The world is full of doubters. But you know better than anyone that the impossible is just an obstacle waiting to be overcome." Elon sighed, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. Adam had a way of cutting through the noise, of reminding him of the very thing that had driven him to start SpaceX in the first place. To make the impossible possible. "I just don't want to take unnecessary risks. People are counting on us." Adam's blue eyes shone with the clarity of someone who saw the world with absolute certainty. The biggest risk is not taking one. If you want to change the world, you have to be willing to step into the unknown. The technology is here, and it's real. It's not just about belief, it's about action. And action is the only way forward. For a long moment, Elon said nothing. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, the weight of the world on his shoulders. But in that silence, something shifted inside him. Adam was right. They couldn't afford to hesitate. They had to move forward. The future was out there, waiting, and it wouldn't wait forever. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice steady and resolute. "We move forward. We test. We push the limits." Adam smiled, a quiet sense of pride crossing his young face. "I knew you'd make the right choice." Elon watched him for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts of the road ahead. This wasn't just a breakthrough in space travel. This was a breakthrough for humanity. A new frontier was opening up before them, one that no one had ever dared to approach. And it all started with a young boy's vision, a vision that had the potential to change everything. As the team moved forward with the next phase of testing, the world continued to react. Some were filled with hope, others with skepticism. But the truth was undeniable. SpaceX, with Adam's guidance, was on the verge of something extraordinary. Elon knew there would be challenges ahead. The path to the stars had never been easy. But for the first time in his life, he was beginning to feel as though they were ready. Ready to take on the impossible. Ready to reach for the stars. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The world had never seen anything like this before. SpaceX's bold claims about a gravitational manipulation system that could fundamentally change the course of space travel were no longer just speculation. They were becoming reality. The media couldn't get enough of it, the public was riveted, and even the skeptics couldn't deny that something extraordinary was happening. Yet, behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting as the team faced the most critical test of all. Could they make it work on a larger scale? Elon Musk paced around his office, his mind racing. It had been weeks since the initial breakthrough, and the excitement was palpable. But the challenges were becoming more complex. The technology that Adam had conceptualized, with its ability to alter gravitational fields, was still in its infancy. The tests were promising, but they had yet to achieve a fully sustainable and controlled effect. They needed to move faster, but every step forward seemed to be met with an equally daunting step backward. Elon picked up his phone and dialed Mark's number. His chief engineer had been at the forefront of testing the new system. Elon needed to know where they stood. "Mark," Elon said as soon as Mark answered, his voice sharp with urgency. "Where are we with the gravity generators? I need to know if we're ready for the next test." "We've made progress, but it's slow," Mark replied, his tone filled with the weight of responsibility. "The power required to maintain a stable gravitational shift at the levels we're aiming for is still inconsistent. We're running into issues with energy efficiency. The generators are burning more power than we anticipated." Elon rubbed his temples, feeling the pressure mounting. They had already poured so much into this, and the world was watching. Every delay was another opportunity for their competitors to catch up or, worse, for the public's enthusiasm to wane. "What's the timeline?" he asked, trying to keep his frustration in check. "At least another 2 weeks before we can try a full-scale test," Mark said. "We're close, but we're not there yet. We'll need more time to stabilize the power fluctuations." Elon felt a deep sense of frustration. They had pushed so hard, and now it seemed like they were hitting a wall. But then, he remembered something Adam had said. The biggest risk is not taking one. And Elon knew that if they didn't keep pushing, someone else would. "Fine," Elon said, after a pause. 2 weeks, but no more delays after that. Make it happen." He hung up the phone and sat down at his desk, staring out the window. The reality of the situation hit him harder than ever before. The future of space exploration, the future of humanity's journey beyond Earth, was in their hands. If they succeeded, they would change the course of history. If they failed, it would be a devastating setback. As Elon sat there, deep in thought, his door opened and Adam walked in, his presence quiet yet commanding. The boy seemed to understand the weight of the moment better than anyone. "You're worried," Adam said, his voice calm. "But this is exactly where we need to be. You've always said that nothing worth doing is ever easy. This is the hard part." Elon looked up at Adam, surprised by the calm certainty in his voice. "You're right," Elon replied, trying to smile. "But I've also learned that sometimes the hard part is knowing when to step back and reassess." Adam shook his head, his expression serious. "Reassessing is fine, but it can't be an excuse for hesitation. The world is watching us, and they're waiting. We can't afford to back down now. If we don't take the next step, someone else will." The words hit Elon harder than he expected. It wasn't just about SpaceX anymore. It was about the future. About pushing humanity to take its place among the stars. Adam wasn't just a brilliant mind. He was a leader, a visionary in his own right, even at such a young age. "You're right," Elon said again, more determined this time. "We've come too far to stop now." 2 weeks later, the day of the full-scale test arrived. The team was on edge. The gravitational manipulation system was being hooked up to the primary test module, a vessel designed to withstand the intense forces that would result from the gravitational shift. The team had spent sleepless nights working out the kinks, refining the technology, and ensuring that everything was in place. They were ready, or as ready as they could be. Adam stood at the control console, his fingers moving with precision as he reviewed the data. His face was calm, focused, but there was a palpable intensity in the air around him. Elon stood behind him, watching with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Is everything ready?" Elon asked. Adam nodded. "It's all set. But remember, this isn't just a test of the technology. It's a test of us, of what we're capable of. We have to be willing to push the limits." Elon nodded, his gaze steady. "Let's do it." The countdown began, and the tension in the room was unbearable. Every technician, every engineer, every member of the team was glued to their screens, watching as the systems powered up. The hum of energy filling the room was almost too much to bear. Then, the moment of truth arrived. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The room fell silent. And then, the gravitational field generators roared to life. At first, it was subtle. A slight shift in the air, a gentle pull, as if the entire room was breathing in sync with the energy they were harnessing. But then, the room began to shake. The ground beneath their feet vibrated as the gravitational shift intensified. It wasn't just a test of technology, it was a test of their courage. Elon's heart raced as the systems came online. The gravitational field shifted in the test module, bending the space around it. The room seemed to warp, as if reality itself were being altered. For a brief moment, everything felt suspended. The laws of physics, as they had always known them, seemed to pause. Time itself felt distorted. Then, just as quickly as it began, the system stabilized. The vibrations stopped. The air returned to normal. The lights flickered, but the technology was holding steady. "We did it," Mark whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Elon stood still, staring at the data streaming across the monitors. It was happening. They had succeeded. The technology was real. And this was the moment they had been waiting for. The tipping point had arrived. "We're ready," Elon said quietly, a sense of triumph filling him. "This changes everything." Adam smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "It's just the beginning." And in that moment, Elon realized that Adam was right. This wasn't the end of the journey. It was only the start of something far greater. The future was here, and they were about to take humanity to the stars. The news of the successful gravitational manipulation test spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves throughout the world. Every major news outlet covered the story, from the New York Times to CNN, all the way to the smaller, more niche scientific blogs that had tracked SpaceX's progress over the years. This wasn't just another technological advance. This was a monumental shift, a seismic event in the realm of space exploration. Elon Musk found himself at the center of it all. Interviews, press conferences, and endless calls from investors and world leaders. The world had been waiting for this moment, and now that it had arrived, the spotlight was brighter than ever before. It felt as though the weight of the future rested on his shoulders. But for all the attention, there was still one question that haunted him. What now? They had done the impossible. The gravitational shift system had been successfully tested, but the technology was still in its early stages. There were countless hurdles to overcome before it could be used on a large scale. And Elon, as always, was keenly aware of the risks. As he sat in his office, reviewing the data from the test, his mind raced. The team had managed to manipulate gravitational fields on a small scale, but the next step, making it viable for space travel, would require far more precision, far more energy, and far more time. "Elon," a voice interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to see Mark standing in the doorway, holding a tablet in his hands. "We've got a problem. There are some unexpected results from the test." Elon's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of results?" Mark stepped inside, handing over the tablet. The screen showed the data from the gravitational shift, but the readings were unlike anything they had expected. The system is stable, well, relatively stable, but we're detecting some anomalies. Small fluctuations in the field. It's not enough to cause immediate danger, but it's there. Elon frowned, studying the numbers. How bad is it? It's manageable, Mark replied, but we can't ignore it. These fluctuations could cause problems down the line, especially when we start scaling up. Elon let out a deep breath. There was always something. No breakthrough ever came without its complications. What do we need to do to fix it? We're going to have to isolate the exact source of the fluctuations, Mark said. It could be a problem with the energy regulators, or it could be something deeper in the gravitational field generators themselves. Either way, it's going to take time. Elon nodded. Time. That was the one thing they didn't have in abundance. With every passing day, the pressure to deliver something tangible increased. And then there was Adam, the young genius who had already altered the trajectory of SpaceX's mission. Adam was the reason they had even gotten this far. Elon couldn't afford to let him down, not when they were so close to achieving the impossible. The young boy had become more than just a prodigy. He had become a symbol of hope for the future. It wasn't just Elon who had recognized Adam's brilliance. The world had too. The media was obsessed with the idea that someone so young could possess such an extraordinary mind. They spoke of Adam as though he were the key to humanity's future in space, a living, breathing savant capable of unlocking mysteries that had eluded scientists for centuries. But Adam wasn't just a face for the cameras. He was driven by something deeper. His calm, collected demeanor had earned him respect, even among the most seasoned scientists at SpaceX. Yet, there was always something about him, an underlying sense of purpose, a quiet intensity, that made those around him feel as though they were witnessing something truly special. Elon was drawn to Adam's insight. The boy's ability to think outside the box, to approach problems from angles that others couldn't even fathom, was extraordinary. In many ways, Elon saw a reflection of his younger self in Adam, a visionary who was unafraid to challenge the status quo. That evening, as the team continued to analyze the anomalies, Elon invited Adam to his office. He needed to speak to him, not just about the project, but about the future. Elon had always believed in pushing the limits of possibility, but now, with Adam at his side, the stakes felt higher than ever. Adam, Elon said as the boy entered, his voice filled with quiet admiration. I've been thinking about what you've said, about pushing the limits. But there's something we need to talk about. Adam looked up at him, his eyes clear and focused. What is it, Mr. Musk? The technology is progressing. We've made incredible strides, but there's still a long road ahead. We're encountering some complications with the gravitational system. Small glitches, but they could become bigger issues if we're not careful. Adam listened intently, nodding. I'm aware. The fluctuations in the field? They're not surprising. The system is still in its infancy, but I think we can address it. Elon raised an eyebrow. You have an idea? Adam smiled slightly. I've been running some simulations in my head. The key to solving the problem isn't just refining the technology. It's about rethinking the way we approach gravitational fields. We've been using conventional models, but the truth is, those models have limits. Elon leaned forward, intrigued. So what do you suggest? Adam paused for a moment, as if contemplating how to explain something so complex in simple terms. We need to think in terms of dynamic, adaptive fields. Right now, we're controlling the gravitational shift as a fixed force. But gravity isn't static. It's dynamic. If we could make the field more adaptive, more responsive to the environment, we could solve the fluctuations. Elon stared at him, stunned. That's actually brilliant. But it's a completely different approach. It could change everything. Adam shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. It's about looking at the problem from a new angle. Gravity isn't something you can simply control. It's something that responds to the environment. We need to create a system that can adapt to those changes, rather than force it into a static pattern. Elon felt a surge of excitement. This was the kind of thinking that had always propelled humanity forward, thinking beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. Adam had just opened up a new path, one that Elon was eager to explore. We'll get to work on it right away, Elon said, standing up. You're a genius, Adam. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. Adam smiled again, a look of quiet satisfaction crossing his face. I'm just getting started. The atmosphere at SpaceX headquarters had changed. What was once a quiet, methodical place of progress had transformed into a bustling, high-energy lab of innovation. Teams were working around the clock, fueled by a single-minded determination to solve the gravitational field anomalies. Elon had already greenlit Adam's new approach, and the team had begun recalibrating the system based on his suggestions. It was risky, but it felt right. There was a sense of urgency in the air that could not be ignored. Everything they were working on was about to become reality. Elon sat at his desk, staring at the new data coming in. The results from Adam's new dynamic, adaptive gravitational model were nothing short of extraordinary. The fluctuations had been reduced to a minimal level, and the field stability was improving at an unexpected rate. This was the moment, the breakthrough they had all been hoping for. Elon, Mark said, entering the office with a tablet in hand. You need to see this. Elon looked up, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Mark handed him the tablet, and Elon's gaze quickly fell on the screen. The data was clean, precise, and most importantly, it was promising. The gravitational system, which had once been plagued by instability, now showed a level of consistency that hadn't been possible before. They were getting closer to achieving what they had set out to do: manipulate gravity at scale. Adam's approach is working, Elon said, his voice almost a whisper. We're almost there. Mark nodded, his face still serious. Yes, but we're not out of the woods yet. The data looks good, but there are still a lot of variables to account for. If we push too hard, we could risk damaging the entire system. We need to take it slow. Elon nodded, though his mind raced with possibilities. SpaceX had been on the brink of greatness for years, and this was the moment they'd been waiting for. But Mark was right. If they moved too quickly, they could lose everything. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Elon looked up, surprised to see Adam standing there, his expression calm but with a hint of excitement in his eyes. You're looking at the data, Adam said, stepping inside. I take it it's good news? It's better than good, Elon replied, handing the tablet to Adam. You were right. Your adaptive model is working, but we're still being cautious. Adam studied the data, his eyes scanning the numbers with the practiced ease of someone who could instantly make sense of complex patterns. After a moment, he looked up. You don't need to be cautious. You've got this, Elon. Elon laughed softly. I wish it were that simple. The truth is, we've got a long way to go before we're ready for the big test. I'd like to do a small-scale demonstration before we take it to space. Adam shook his head, his confidence unwavering. I'm ready. We're ready. Elon could feel the weight of those words. Adam's faith in their ability to succeed had been a driving force for him throughout this process. And now, as the boys stood there, so sure of their impending success, Elon couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of optimism. You're right, Elon said. We can't afford to hesitate now. Let's make it happen. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The team worked tirelessly to prepare for the demonstration. The goal was simple: to use the gravitational manipulation technology on a small, contained scale, just large enough to prove its viability. But as the day of the test approached, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The day of the demonstration arrived. SpaceX had gathered a select group of investors, scientists, and key figures from NASA. There was a palpable energy in the air as the team prepped for the test. Elon, Adam, and the rest of the crew stood in the control room, watching the monitors as everything came online. Ready? Elon asked, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Ready, Mark replied, tapping at the console. The systems hummed to life. Adam, standing beside Elon, glanced at him with a quiet smile. This is it, he said. Let's show them what we can do. Elon nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment that could change everything. The world had been watching from afar, but now they were about to see the future unfold before their eyes. With a flick of a switch, the gravitational field generator powered up. The machine came to life, sending out a faint hum as the field began to shift. At first, there was nothing, no visible change. But then, the test object, a small spherical capsule, began to float gently off the ground. It hovered there, suspended in midair, as if the very laws of physics had been rewritten. The crowd in the observation room gasped in awe. The team stood in stunned silence, watching the display of gravity manipulation. It was nothing short of breathtaking. The capsule floated higher, its movements smooth and controlled, following the delicate tug of the gravitational field that had been manipulated. For a moment, there was pure silence. Then, one by one, the observers began to cheer. A wave of applause filled the room as they witnessed something that had never been seen before. A successful demonstration of gravitational manipulation at scale. "We did it," Elon said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Adam looked up at him, his eyes bright with satisfaction. "It's just the beginning," he said. The world was watching. The ripple effect had begun. News outlets around the world began reporting on the test. Headlines blared about the breakthrough. The media's focus was unwavering. And in the midst of it all, Elon knew that this was the first step in a much greater journey. A journey that would take humanity further than they had ever dreamed. SpaceX had done the impossible. And now, with Adam's genius and their collective determination, the future was in their hands. The following weeks were a blur of excitement and anticipation. After the successful demonstration of the gravitational manipulation system, the world had been forever changed. SpaceX had proven that humanity could manipulate gravity, a concept once thought to be the realm of science fiction. The technology was still in its early stages, but the potential was undeniable. Elon Musk and his team had opened the door to an entirely new frontier, one that would lead to the stars. The media coverage was overwhelming. News outlets, from the New York Times to international broadcasts, couldn't get enough of the breakthrough. Elon was everywhere, on TV, in interviews, and on the cover of magazines. There were even whispers about a potential Nobel Prize in physics, though Elon had long dismissed such honors as distractions from the real work at hand. Still, the recognition from the world was something no one could ignore. But amid all the celebration, there was a quiet realization settling in the minds of Elon and his team. They had only scratched the surface. The technology was groundbreaking, yes, but there was still much to be done. They had proven that it was possible to manipulate gravitational fields on a small scale, but the real challenge lay in scaling the technology up, making it viable for space travel. And that meant dealing with all of the intricacies that came with harnessing such a powerful force. Elon stood in front of a massive boardroom table, surrounded by some of the brightest minds at SpaceX. The plans were laid out in front of him, blueprints, calculations, and projections. They had already accomplished the impossible, but the road ahead was still long. "We've done it," Elon said, his voice cutting through the room. "But we've only just begun." The team nodded, their faces a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They knew that the next steps would be the hardest. The gravitational manipulation system was unstable at higher power levels, and there was still no definitive way to predict how it would behave when tested in deep space. There were countless variables to account for, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. Mark, who had been monitoring the data, spoke up. "The scaling is going to be a massive challenge. The system works fine at small levels, but we'll need to develop new energy sources and control mechanisms to support it at larger scales. We're talking about powering entire spacecraft with this technology. It's not going to be easy." "I know," Elon replied, "but we've got to try. The future of space exploration depends on it." Adam, who had been silent up until now, raised his hand. The room fell quiet as all eyes turned toward the young genius. There was an air of quiet respect whenever Adam spoke. His words always carried weight, even in a room full of experienced engineers and scientists. "I've been thinking about the energy issue," Adam said. "The gravitational field manipulation requires an immense amount of power, but what if we could harvest energy from the field itself? Rather than relying solely on external power sources, we could create a self-sustaining system that draws energy from the very gravity fields we're manipulating." Elon's eyes widened. "You mean we could create a feedback loop? Use the system to power itself?" Adam nodded. "Exactly. We'd have to make adjustments to the system's design, but I believe it's possible. If we can develop a way to harvest the energy from the gravitational shifts themselves, we could create a closed-loop system that doesn't rely on conventional energy sources. The room went silent for a moment as the implications of Adam's suggestion sunk in. If it worked, it would solve one of the biggest obstacles they had been facing: how to power the system in space, where energy sources were limited. A self-sustaining energy loop would make long-term space travel feasible. They would no longer be dependent on rocket fuel or traditional energy sources. Elon couldn't help but smile. I like the sound of that. Let's start working on it immediately. With Adam's new proposal on the table, the team went into overdrive. They began redesigning the gravitational manipulation system to incorporate Adam's idea of an energy harvesting feedback loop. The challenge would be immense. They would have to rethink everything they knew about energy production, propulsion, and even the basic laws of physics that govern their technology. But for the first time in months, Elon felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead was still treacherous, but now they had a new direction, one that could propel them into the next phase of their journey. As the team worked tirelessly on the new design, Elon took a moment to reflect on the larger picture. SpaceX had already accomplished things that many thought were impossible. They had made private space travel a reality. They had brought humans to the International Space Station, and now they were on the cusp of unlocking the very fabric of the universe itself. The dream of interstellar travel was within their grasp. But that wasn't enough for Elon. He wasn't just interested in getting to Mars. He wasn't even just interested in reaching the stars. He wanted to open up the entire cosmos to humanity, to create a future where humans could explore and settle on distant worlds, where the bounds of possibility were limitless. And he knew that Adam, with his incredible mind, was the key to making that future a reality. Days turned into weeks, and the team worked tirelessly on the new design. The gravitational field manipulation system was being refined, with new energy harvesting mechanisms being incorporated into the core of the technology. The results were promising, but the real test would come when they finally put it to use on a spacecraft. And then, just as they were making significant progress, an unexpected visitor arrived at SpaceX headquarters. It was a government official from NASA, and he wasn't there for a friendly chat. The world was watching SpaceX closely, but NASA's leaders had begun to grow concerned. They had seen the breakthroughs, and they had seen Elon Musk's relentless ambition. But they also knew that there were risks that SpaceX was taking with little regard for the potential consequences. And now, NASA wanted a say in the future of space travel. Elon met the official in his office, his expression neutral but guarded. "What brings you here?" Elon asked, his voice measured. The official, a man in his mid-40s with short-cropped hair and a stern expression, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm here to discuss the implications of your gravitational manipulation technology. We've seen your tests, and while the results are impressive, we have concerns." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Concerns?" "Yes," the official replied. "You're pushing boundaries that no one has ever attempted. There's no telling what could go wrong. We need to have a serious conversation about the safety and potential risks of this technology before you move forward." Elon took a deep breath, already knowing that this was coming. He had anticipated resistance, but SpaceX wasn't about to back down now. "I understand your concerns," Elon said, his voice steady. "But this is the future. If we don't take risks, we'll never move forward. And I believe we have the ability to control this technology safely. We're not going to rush it, but we can't stop either." The official stood up, his expression unreadable. "We'll be monitoring you closely, Elon, and we'll be ready to step in if things get out of hand." Elon nodded. He had heard this before, but now it was different. The stakes were higher. The future was closer than ever. As the official left his office, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. The new frontier was waiting. And with Adam's genius and SpaceX's resolve, nothing was going to stop them. The tension in the control room was palpable as Elon, Adam, and the team gathered around the glowing console. They had reached a critical juncture in their journey, and with each passing day, the pressure mounted. SpaceX was on the brink of something unprecedented, but with that came new challenges that no one could have predicted. The recent visit from the NASA official had left a mark on Elon's mind. Though he had brushed it off with his usual confidence, the underlying message was clear. The world was watching, and there was no room for error. SpaceX wasn't just a private company anymore. It was on the world stage, and every move they made would be scrutinized by governments, organizations, and the media. But Elon's mind wasn't focused on the politics. It never was. He had one goal: to make humanity a multiplanetary species. The stakes were too high to let anything distract him. And despite the growing tension with NASA and other stakeholders, Elon knew that their next step, testing the gravity manipulation system in space, was the only path forward. Adam had been working relentlessly on the energy harvesting system, fine-tuning it to the point where it was ready for its first full-scale trial. They were on the verge of testing a system that could power an entire spacecraft with nothing but the energy harvested from gravitational manipulation. If it worked, it would change everything. But the risks were monumental. Elon stood at the edge of the launch pad, his eyes scanning the sleek spacecraft sitting in front of him. It was their prototype, an advanced, gravity-powered ship that would carry the technology to the final frontier. The design was like nothing the world had ever seen. Compact, streamlined, and capable of harnessing gravitational fields to propel itself through space. "Everything's ready for the launch," Mark said, standing next to Elon, his voice steady. "The energy system is stable, and the grav field stabilizer is running at full capacity." Elon nodded but didn't speak. His mind was elsewhere. The pressure was mounting, and every fiber of his being was focused on one thing: making sure they got it right. Adam joined them on the launch pad, his expression calm but serious. The boy genius had spent countless hours refining the system, and now it was his turn to see if it would work. "Are you ready?" Elon asked, turning to Adam. Adam nodded, his face expressionless, but there was a gleam of excitement in his eyes. "We've come this far. There's no turning back now." With a single press of a button, the countdown began. The crew moved quickly, finalizing the last checks and ensuring everything was in place. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. 3, 2, 1. Mark's voice rang out. The engines of the spacecraft ignited, sending a powerful surge of energy through the system. The spacecraft lifted off the ground, rising slowly at first, then gaining momentum as the gravitational field stabilized around it. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. This wasn't just a rocket taking off. This was a ship propelled by the very force that governed the universe itself. The ship hovered above the launch pad for a few moments, before it soared into the sky. For a brief moment, it appeared weightless, gliding through the air with effortless grace. Elon watched, his heart racing, as the ship climbed higher and higher, disappearing into the clouds. "We've done it," Elon muttered to himself. "It's working." But then, just as the spacecraft reached the edge of the atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The energy stabilizer flickered. Elon's eyes widened as he saw the system falter in real time. The gravitational field around the ship began to fluctuate, causing it to jerk violently. The ship started to tumble, spinning uncontrollably as its once steady lift became unpredictable. "Mark, what's happening?" Elon shouted, his voice laced with panic. "We're losing the field," Mark responded, frantically working the controls. "It's not stable enough for this altitude. We need to stabilize it now." Elon's mind raced. This was the exact scenario they had feared. A failure at the most critical moment. The spacecraft was still in space, but without the gravitational field to stabilize it, it would be powerless. They had to act fast. "Adam, we need to fix this," Elon barked. Adam's face paled, but his hands were steady as he typed rapidly on the control panel. He was the one who had designed the system, and now it was his turn to save it. "I'm working on it," Adam replied, his voice calm despite the urgency. "I need more time." The spacecraft continued to tumble, and the situation became more dire by the second. Elon's heart raced, and for a split second, he felt the crushing weight of failure settle in. They had come so far, and now, it seemed like they were about to lose everything. Then, just as hope seemed to fade, Adam's voice broke through the panic. "I've got it," Adam shouted. "I'm sending a correction signal to the field. Hold on." The control room fell silent as everyone waited for the response. The spacecraft tumbled for another few seconds, its movements erratic, before. Suddenly, everything stopped. The gravitational field restabilized, and the ship regained control, righting itself mid-flight. The tumbling stopped, and the ship began to hover steadily once more. Elon let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We did it," he whispered. "We're back on track." Adam's voice crackled through the intercom. "The system is stabilizing. We're good to go." The spacecraft, though shaken by the brief instability, was now moving smoothly through the atmosphere. The gravitational field had returned to normal, and the ship was safely on its course. Elon turned to Adam, who had a slight smile on his face. Despite the chaos, the young genius had pulled them through. "You did it, Adam," Elon said, his voice filled with admiration. "That was incredible." Adam simply nodded. "We all did it. We're not done yet, though. There's still much more to learn." The ship continued its journey into space, and as Elon watched the live feed from the control room, he knew that this was just the beginning. The challenges they faced were monumental, but each success, no matter how small, was another step closer to their goal. The future of humanity, of space exploration, was now within their grasp. But as the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching something even bigger. Something that had the potential to change everything. The storm had passed, but Elon knew that new challenges were always on the horizon. And this time, they would face them head-on. The news of SpaceX's successful gravity manipulation test had spread like wildfire. Headlines across the globe lauded Elon Musk and his team for their groundbreaking achievement. It seemed as though the impossible had been done. Humanity was now one step closer to harnessing the very fabric of the universe, gravity itself. The media praised the young genius Adam for his pivotal role in the success. Every scientist and engineer in the world had their eyes fixed on SpaceX, waiting for the next big leap. But as the celebrations began to settle and the team took a brief moment to catch their breath, the reality of what they had just accomplished began to set in. The consequences of tampering with gravity were far-reaching, and they were only beginning to understand the full scope of it. Elon sat in his office late one evening, staring out at the bustling SpaceX campus. The faint hum of the air conditioning and the low murmur of the team in the distance were the only sounds in the room. His mind was racing. The trial had been a success, but it was clear that their work had only just begun. They had unlocked a new frontier, but with that came the unsettling awareness that they didn't fully know the consequences of their actions. Suddenly, the door to his office opened, and Mark stepped inside, looking troubled. Elon didn't need to ask what was wrong. He could see the concern etched on Mark's face. "We've got a problem," Mark said, his voice tight. Elon raised an eyebrow, gesturing for Mark to continue. "What kind of problem?" "It's the gravitational fields," Mark replied. "We've noticed something strange in the data. After the test flight, we've been picking up some irregularities, subtle shifts in the Earth's gravitational field. It's nothing catastrophic, but we're seeing slight fluctuations." Elon's heart skipped a beat. "Fluctuations? In the Earth's gravitational field?" "Yes," Mark confirmed. "It's small for now, but we're seeing a pattern. The shifts are becoming more frequent. We don't fully understand the cause yet, but the gravity manipulation system could be affecting the Earth's natural gravitational balance." Elon leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning. "Are you saying that the system could be altering the planet's gravity?" Mark hesitated for a moment before responding. "That's what the data suggests. We're still analyzing it, but the results are concerning. If the fluctuations continue, there's no telling what could happen." Elon stood up and paced the room, trying to process the information. He had always known that their work was groundbreaking, but he hadn't anticipated this level of consequence. They were dealing with forces that were far beyond anything they had ever worked with, and now they were beginning to see just how delicate the balance of nature could be. "We need to take this seriously," Elon said, his voice low. "Start running simulations immediately. We can't afford to overlook any potential risks." Mark nodded. "I'll assemble a team. We'll get on it right away." As Mark left the room to gather the team, Elon stood by the window, his thoughts racing. SpaceX had always been about pushing boundaries, challenging what was possible. But now, for the first time in years, Elon wondered if they had pushed too far. The following days were filled with intense research and analysis. The team at SpaceX worked tirelessly, running simulations, recalibrating the system, and analyzing every bit of data they could gather. The results were sobering. The gravitational fluctuations, though still small, were increasing in frequency. It wasn't just a localized phenomenon, it was spreading. The gravitational shifts were being detected in areas far beyond their testing sites, including regions that had never been involved in any of their experiments. Adam, who had been working alongside the team on the energy harvesting system, was the first to bring up an unsettling possibility. Could the manipulation of gravity be affecting the Earth's magnetic field? Adam asked one evening, his voice calm but filled with concern. I've been looking at the data, and it seems like there might be a correlation between the fluctuations in gravity and changes in the magnetic field. Elon frowned. The magnetic field was critical for life on Earth. It protected the planet from harmful solar radiation, and any disturbances could have far-reaching effects. If they were inadvertently tampering with it, the consequences could be disastrous. Mark, who had been leading the simulations, nodded grimly. I've been thinking the same thing. The fluctuations are subtle, but we could be triggering disturbances that we don't fully understand. Elon took a deep breath, trying to think through the potential consequences. The gravitational field around the Earth was delicate, and any tampering with it could have unforeseen repercussions. They had unlocked a force more powerful than they had ever anticipated, and now it seemed that the very technology they had created was beginning to have unintended side effects. This is bigger than we thought, Elon said, his voice tense. We need to find a way to stabilize the system before this gets out of hand. If we don't, we could be looking at a global crisis. The team worked around the clock, attempting to isolate the cause of the disturbances and find a way to contain the fluctuations. But with each passing day, the problem seemed to be getting worse. The gravitational shifts were becoming more pronounced, and the effects were starting to ripple through the atmosphere, affecting everything from weather patterns to ocean tides. The Earth was reacting in ways no one had predicted. As the days turned into weeks, the world began to notice the changes. Unusual weather patterns were appearing across the globe. Intense storms, shifts in wind patterns, and rising sea levels in areas that had never been affected by flooding before. Scientists from around the world were scrambling to understand the cause of these phenomena, but they couldn't explain the sudden, unpredictable changes. The media, too, began to take notice. The headlines were no longer focused on SpaceX's success. Instead, the world was starting to ask questions. Was the gravity manipulation system responsible for the environmental chaos? Elon knew that their breakthrough had set off a chain of events they weren't prepared for. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. SpaceX had been the beacon of hope for humanity's future, but now it seemed as though their ambitions were starting to unravel. The consequences of their actions were becoming more dire, and there was no easy way to undo what had been done. We can't fix this on our own, Elon said one evening, after a tense meeting with his team. We need to collaborate with the world's top scientists. This isn't just about SpaceX anymore. It's about the future of the planet. Mark looked at him gravely. It might already be too late to reverse the effects. Elon closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the responsibility bearing down on him. He had always known that pushing boundaries came with risks, but this was something entirely different. The consequences of their work were now echoing across the globe, and they were facing the harsh reality that the future they had worked so hard to build might be slipping away. As days turned into weeks, the consequences of SpaceX's gravitational manipulation technology became undeniable. The world was in turmoil. Strange weather phenomena, unexplained environmental changes, and even unusual geological activity were being reported in places that had never seen such events before. News outlets scrambled to piece together the mystery. Scientists and world leaders were in a state of emergency, trying to understand what was causing the chaos. The most troubling development was the effect on the Earth's gravitational field. The fluctuations were becoming more pronounced and widespread. Satellites were now picking up anomalies in the atmosphere, and some even predicted a potential shift in the Earth's orbit, a terrifying thought that left many wondering whether their planet was on the brink of disaster. It wasn't long before the world's governments began to take notice. United Nations officials convened emergency meetings, summoning scientists from all over the world to discuss the mysterious phenomenon. The SpaceX team was summoned to testify, and Elon Musk, the brilliant mind behind the breakthrough, found himself at the center of a global reckoning. Elon paced nervously in his office, reviewing the latest reports. The weight of the world was on his shoulders. His phone buzzed incessantly, messages from world leaders, journalists, and scientists flooding his inbox. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone wanted answers, and they wanted them now. Mark, who had been with him throughout the crisis, entered the room. Elon, the UN has requested an urgent meeting. They want you to testify. The pressure is building, and they're asking for a full explanation. Elon exhaled sharply, rubbing his eyes. He had expected this moment, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure how to face it. The whole world was waiting for him to explain the unexplainable. "I never thought it would come to this," Elon said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were trying to save the world, to push humanity into a new age of exploration. But now—" Mark's voice cut through the tension. "You know this wasn't intentional. We're not the ones causing these disasters, but we have to own up to our role in it." Elon nodded slowly, his mind racing. "You're right. We can't hide from this. But what do we do now? How do we fix it?" "I don't know," Mark admitted, his face grim. "But the UN meeting could be the first step toward understanding the full scope of this. If we're going to solve it, we need to work together." The next day, Elon and his team flew to New York City for the United Nations emergency session. The room was filled with the world's top diplomats, scientists, and environmental experts. There was an unmistakable tension in the air as everyone waited for Elon to speak. As he stepped up to the podium, he was met with a sea of expectant faces. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. This wasn't just about SpaceX anymore. It was about the future of humanity. A small part of him wondered if he had made a grave mistake, but he quickly shoved the thought aside. There was no time for doubt. Esteemed members of the United Nations, world leaders, and citizens of the Earth, Elon began, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "We stand at a crossroads, and the future of our planet hangs in the balance. My team and I at SpaceX have always strived to push the boundaries of what is possible. But in doing so, we've made a discovery, one that has had unintended consequences. We've developed a technology capable of manipulating gravity. And though we believed it to be a breakthrough for humanity, we now understand that the impact of this technology is far greater than we could have ever anticipated." A murmur ran through the room, and Elon paused, letting his words sink in. "We did not anticipate that tampering with gravity would create fluctuations in the Earth's natural field. These disturbances, as small as they may seem, are beginning to affect the planet's weather, ocean currents, and even geological stability. What we've seen in the past weeks is only the beginning, and I fear that if we do not act quickly, the effects will escalate." Elon's gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with the world leaders sitting before him. "We have a responsibility to fix this, to work together with scientists, environmentalists, and engineers from across the globe to undo the damage we've caused. The road ahead will be difficult, but we cannot turn back. The future of humanity depends on the actions we take today." The room was silent as Elon finished speaking. The weight of his words hung in the air, and for a long moment, no one moved. Then, a voice broke through the stillness. "I think we can all agree that this is a crisis," said Dr. Elena White, a leading environmental scientist. "But we need more than just words. We need a plan, an actionable strategy that will restore balance before it's too late." Elon nodded, his eyes steady. "We've already begun working on a solution. We've developed a recalibration system, a way to reverse the fluctuations and stabilize the gravitational field. But we need the resources and the cooperation of every nation to make it work. This is bigger than SpaceX. It's about the planet's survival." The room was abuzz with conversations, some skeptical, others hopeful. But there was a sense of unity in the air. The realization was clear. They were all in this together, whether they liked it or not. As the meeting concluded, Elon found himself walking out of the United Nations building with a sense of cautious optimism. They had made progress, but the road ahead was still uncertain. The global community had finally recognized the gravity of the situation, and while there was no immediate solution, the seeds of collaboration had been planted. Back at SpaceX, Elon and his team continued to work around the clock. They had recalibrated the gravity manipulation system, but it wasn't enough. They had to stabilize the planet's entire gravitational field, an undertaking that would require unprecedented global cooperation and resources. Time was running out. And yet, as Elon sat at his desk, looking at the latest simulations, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was still ahead. They had unlocked something greater than they could control, and the unknown consequences of that discovery might be more profound than anyone had realized. The months following the United Nations meeting felt like a blur. After the summit, the world had come together with a shared goal: to reverse the disturbances caused by SpaceX's gravity manipulation technology. The gravity fluctuations were now a global concern, and with each passing day, the situation seemed to worsen. Elon spent sleepless nights in the SpaceX lab, his eyes glued to the screens displaying data from satellites, weather reports, and the newly developed gravitational sensors. The team had made significant progress on the recalibration system, but it was becoming increasingly clear that they were racing against time. The fluctuations were now having more severe consequences. Earthquakes in regions that were once considered geologically stable, unpredictable weather patterns wreaking havoc on crop yields, and the ocean tides rising higher than ever before. The Earth was beginning to show the strain of the artificial manipulation of its gravity. The worst part was that even though they had begun efforts to counteract the effects, they were no closer to fully understanding how to repair the damage they had caused. The recalibration system, while promising, had not yet yielded results that were consistent enough to restore stability. Elon sat with Mark in a makeshift strategy room at SpaceX, discussing their next steps. "We need to bring in the best minds from every field," Elon said, rubbing his temples. "This isn't just a technological problem anymore. It's a planetary crisis. We need environmental scientists, engineers, geophysicists, and even meteorologists. Everyone who can help." Mark nodded grimly. "It's going to take a unified global effort. No one has ever faced something like this before." As the team expanded to include more experts, it became clear that the problem wasn't going to be solved by technology alone. They needed to understand the underlying forces at play: the relationship between the planet's gravitational field, its magnetic field, and the delicate balance of natural systems that kept life functioning. The Earth's internal systems were under threat, and every passing day brought them closer to a critical tipping point. In the midst of the global crisis, a new player entered the scene: Dr. Alan Jacobs, a renowned physicist who had spent his life studying the effects of gravity on planetary bodies. Dr. Jacobs had been following the developments at SpaceX from the beginning, but it wasn't until the global consequences of the technology became undeniable that he stepped forward to offer his expertise. "Elon, Mark," Dr. Jacobs said during their first meeting, "I've been monitoring the gravitational anomalies, and I believe there's a way to reverse the effects, but it's not going to be easy. We need to use the very technology that created the problem, but in a way that harmonizes the gravitational field with the Earth's natural resonance." Elon looked up, his interest piqued. "What do you mean by resonance?" Dr. Jacobs leaned forward, his fingers tapping against the table. "The Earth's gravitational field is a complex system. It's not just about pulling and pushing. There's a natural rhythm to it, a resonance that allows life to exist. When we introduced artificial gravity manipulation, we threw off that balance. We need to reverse engineer our system to realign with this natural resonance. But this isn't just a technological fix. It's a science that combines gravity, electromagnetism, and even quantum mechanics." Elon absorbed the information with a sense of awe, but the weight of the situation was still heavy. "How long do we have before this system becomes irreversible?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Dr. Jacobs hesitated. "If the fluctuations continue to increase, we could see global catastrophes within the next few months, natural disasters on an unprecedented scale. We're talking about earthquakes, tsunamis, and global temperature shifts. But there's hope. If we act fast, we might still be able to stabilize the system." Elon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Then what do we do? We don't have months. We need a solution now." Dr. Jacobs straightened in his chair. "We need to create a counterfield, a gravitational field that will counteract the fluctuations. We'll need to deploy a massive network of satellites, each equipped with the recalibration technology to create a stabilizing force around the planet. But the technology isn't ready, and the risk of failure is high. Mark exchanged a look with Elon. But it's our only shot, right? Dr. Jacobs nodded solemnly. Yes, but time is running out. If we delay any longer, we might find ourselves in a situation where we can't control the damage. The stakes have never been higher. The team, now united in their purpose, worked tirelessly to prepare for the daunting task ahead. They were no longer just scientists and engineers. They were guardians of the planet's future. Elon could feel the tension mounting as the day of the global launch approached. The world was watching, waiting to see if SpaceX could truly save them from the brink of disaster. There was no room for failure. Every member of the team knew that this was their last chance to fix what had been broken. As the countdown to the deployment of the stabilizing satellites began, Elon stood in front of the Mission Control Center, staring at the monitors. The data was pouring in, showing the fluctuations in gravity intensifying as the minutes ticked away. The team had one shot at this, one chance to fix what had been set in motion. With a deep breath, Elon activated the launch sequence. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. One by one, the satellites began to launch into orbit, their delicate instruments designed to counteract the gravitational disturbances. The team watched with bated breath as the first signals from the satellites began to arrive. The data was promising. The satellites were starting to interact with the gravitational field in ways that hadn't been possible before. For a moment, it seemed like the impossible was happening. The fluctuations began to subside, and the Earth's natural systems started to stabilize. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. But then, something unexpected happened. As the final satellite deployed, a massive ripple surged through the gravitational field, sending a shockwave across the planet. The systems began to destabilize once more, but this time, the changes were more violent, shifting the balance of the Earth's magnetic field. Elon's heart sank as the data flooded the screens. The counterfields had worked, but the feedback loop from the system had caused an even greater disruption. "Prepare for impact," Mark shouted, as everyone in the room scrambled to assess the damage. Elon felt a deep sense of dread. It seemed like the mission was failing. The shockwave from the gravitational feedback loop had sent the team into a frenzy. Alarms blared, and the entire control room was filled with a frantic energy as the SpaceX team scrambled to stabilize the situation. Elon stood frozen, his mind racing as the new data streamed in. The satellites were failing to contain the gravitational fluctuations. Instead, they seemed to amplify them in unpredictable ways. "Elon, we're losing control," Mark called out from the corner of the room, his voice tense. "The system is spiraling out of control." Elon's hands trembled as he typed commands into the console, trying to assess the damage. But it was no use. The system had been designed to work as a counterforce to the gravitational distortions, but something had gone horribly wrong. The feedback from the artificial gravity manipulation was creating a cascade effect, one that no one had anticipated. "Shut it down," Elon said, his voice sharp. "We need to cut off the system before we cause irreparable damage." As Mark worked frantically to shut down the recalibration system, Elon felt a deep sense of helplessness. The world was depending on them. He had always been confident in SpaceX's ability to overcome challenges, but this was something beyond his control. He had no idea how to fix it. He had no idea how to stop the planet from slipping further into chaos. Suddenly, a new notification appeared on the screen. It was a message from Dr. Jacobs. "I think I have a solution," the message read. "It's risky, but it could work. I've been analyzing the gravitational resonance and discovered that the only way to stabilize it is to create a full reversal of the polarity, essentially, to invert the entire system and redistribute the gravitational field. We would need to initiate a full shutdown and reactivation sequence." Elon stared at the message, his heart pounding in his chest. A reversal of polarity? It was a concept that hadn't even crossed his mind. But was it too late to try something so drastic? Without hesitation, he called Dr. Jacobs. The call went through, and Jacobs' face appeared on the screen, looking strained and anxious. "Elon, I know it sounds crazy," Jacobs said quickly, "but we've reached a tipping point. The reversal could reset the gravitational balance, but only if we can act quickly. I've already made the necessary adjustments to the recalibration system. If we can reset the counterfields now, we might be able to restore equilibrium. But we need to act fast. Time is not on our side. Elon nodded, his mind whirling with the enormity of the decision. How long do we have before the damage becomes permanent? Hours, Dr. Jacobs answered, his voice tight. At most, we have 5 hours before the gravitational distortions reach critical levels. If we don't do something now, the planet's systems will begin to collapse. We could see earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, all of them in rapid succession. Elon's gaze fell on the team, each of them working tirelessly to keep things together. They were exhausted, their faces drawn with stress, but they were not giving up. This was their last chance. "Let's do it," Elon said, resolve hardening in his voice. "We'll initiate the reversal. Mark, get the team ready." The team worked feverishly to implement Dr. Jacobs' plan. They reconfigured the satellites to initiate the full polarity reversal, knowing that one mistake could trigger an irreversible collapse. The tension in the room was palpable as every team member knew the stakes were higher than ever before. With the countdown ticking, they had no time for second-guessing. Elon watched as Mark and the engineers finalized the commands. "This is it," Mark said, his voice steady but filled with an undertone of uncertainty. "Initiating sequence," Elon declared. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, the entire lab shook as the system powered up, and the recalibration satellites began to emit a low hum. The gravitational distortion, which had been causing chaos across the planet, started to stabilize. The data on the screens showed signs of improvement, but it wasn't enough to reassure Elon just yet. But just as hope began to flicker on the horizon, disaster struck from an unexpected direction. The backup systems, which were supposed to protect the recalibration satellites, suddenly malfunctioned. One by one, the satellites began to fall out of sync, sending shockwaves through the already unstable gravitational field. The feedback loop was back, but this time, it was worse. "We have a breach," one of the engineers shouted. "The satellites are failing. They're overloading." Elon felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. "Shut them down," he shouted, his voice rising. "All of them now." But before anyone could respond, a new message flashed across the screen, sending a chill through the room. "Warning, unauthorized access detected." Elon froze. Unauthorized access? That could only mean one thing. His suspicions were confirmed when the next message appeared. "I'm sorry, Elon, but I can't let you undo everything I've worked for." The voice belonged to none other than Lucas, the once trusted lead engineer who had been part of the original team that developed the gravitational technology. Lucas had been mysteriously absent from the project for weeks, but now it was clear. He had been working against them all along. "Lucas," Elon said, his voice thick with disbelief, "you've sabotaged the mission? Why? Why would you do this?" Lucas' face appeared on the screen, his expression cold and detached. "Because you failed to see the bigger picture, Elon. This technology has the potential to change the world, more than just Earth. I couldn't let you destroy it all out of fear. The gravity manipulation was only the beginning. You and your team were too short-sighted to realize the possibilities." Elon's mind reeled. Lucas had betrayed them. He had turned on the very people who trusted him, all for his own vision of what the technology could become. "You're playing with fire, Lucas," Elon said, trying to remain calm. "This is bigger than any one person. We're talking about the survival of the planet." Lucas laughed bitterly. "The planet? Or is it just your ego, Elon? You were never meant to control this. I'm taking it from here." Elon stood there, feeling like the world was slipping through his fingers. Lucas was pulling the strings from the shadows, and he had no idea how deep the sabotage went. But one thing was certain, they were running out of time. "We need to stop him," Elon said urgently to Mark. "He's taken control of the recalibration system." Mark nodded grimly. "We've got no choice. Let's go after him." As the team scrambled to locate Lucas's position, Elon knew one thing for sure. The battle for the future of the planet was far from over. The mission had gone from hope to devastation in a matter of minutes. As the team scrambled to regain control of the system, Elon felt his mind working in overdrive. They had come so close to reversing the gravitational distortions, only to have Lucas, once a trusted colleague, sabotage everything. The thought of betrayal gnawed at him. He had always trusted Lucas, and now the man was standing in their way. "Where is he?" Elon asked, his voice strained. "We need to track his signal. He's the one who triggered the satellite failure." Mark had already started working on the control panel, analyzing data from the satellites, trying to pinpoint Lucas's location. "He's using a secure, encrypted channel. It's tough to track, but I'm narrowing it down. We don't have much time." Elon's eyes flicked to the screens showing real-time data of the planet's gravitational shifts. The distortion had intensified again, causing mass tremors and unstable weather patterns across the globe. They were mere minutes away from catastrophe, and Lucas was in the middle of it all. "Get the satellites back online. We need a full reset, or we'll lose everything," Elon commanded, his voice sharp with urgency. Mark nodded, typing furiously at the console. "The problem is, Lucas has installed a lockout on the systems. I can't override it without risking a total shutdown. If we don't act fast, the recalibration system could completely fail, and we'll never regain control." Elon clenched his fists. The weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. There had to be a way to stop Lucas, before it was too late. Suddenly, a new notification popped up on the screen. "Recalibration system compromised. Unauthorized access confirmed. Lockout in place. 12 minutes until total failure." The countdown had begun. Elon exhaled deeply. "We're out of time. We need a backup plan. Mark, can you access the secondary satellite network?" Mark hesitated for a moment. "The secondary system is not fully operational. If we try to use it now, we risk causing further instability. But if there's no other choice, we have to try." Without hesitation, Elon made the decision. "Do it." As Mark worked on the backup network, Elon paced the room, trying to formulate a plan. They could try to isolate the problem at the source, Lucas, but doing so would be risky. If they failed to shut him down, the entire planet could collapse under the strain of the gravitational instability. Elon knew they couldn't afford to fail, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized just how much was at stake. The Earth, the future of humanity, and everything they had worked for depended on a fragile balance, and Lucas had tipped it over the edge. "Mark," Elon said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room, "is there any way we can communicate directly with Lucas? Can we get him to shut the system down voluntarily?" Mark's hands hovered over the keyboard as he processed the question. "We could try to reach out to him through the encrypted channel. Maybe if we appeal to him, get him to understand what he's done, we can stop this before it gets worse." Elon shook his head. "Lucas doesn't care about the planet. He cares about his vision of the future. We need to confront him head-on." A few moments later, Mark looked up, his eyes wide. "I've located him. He's broadcasting from a station in the Antarctic. That's where the secondary satellite control system is being accessed from." Elon's eyes narrowed. Antarctica. It made sense. The harsh environment was the perfect place for Lucas to hide and work unnoticed. But getting there would be a challenge in itself. No one could afford to waste time with delays. "We'll need a team on the ground," Elon said. "Prepare a strike force. We're going to Antarctica." The journey to Antarctica was intense. Elon, Mark, and a small team of engineers and security personnel boarded a specialized SpaceX transport ship that had been repurposed for quick travel. The icy landscape stretched out before them as they neared the location Lucas had set up his operation. Elon's mind was consumed with the thought of what they were walking into. Could they really stop him before the countdown hit zero? As the transport ship neared the station, the atmosphere was tense. Each minute felt like an hour. When they finally arrived, Elon and Mark led the team through the snow-covered path, the cold seeping through their clothing. Their destination was a hidden base, a satellite control station that had been built under the cover of secrecy. "Elon," Mark said quietly, "this place is off the grid. No one knows about it. Lucas must have been working on this for a while." Elon nodded, keeping his focus. "That's why we're here. We stop him now." The team moved swiftly, entering the base, their breath misting in the freezing air. They followed the map that Mark had managed to hack, leading them to the heart of the facility. Inside, the base was sterile and silent, but the hum of machinery filled the air. At the control center, Lucas stood with his back to them, his eyes fixed on the monitors. His expression was unreadable. "Lucas," Elon called, his voice cold. "It's over. Shut it down." Lucas turned slowly, a twisted smile playing at the edges of his lips. "You think it's over, Elon? You think you can fix this by just turning it off? You have no idea what you've unleashed." Elon stepped forward, unwavering. "It's not just about fixing it, Lucas. It's about saving the world. You're destroying everything for the sake of your own ambitions. You've crossed a line that can't be undone." Lucas' smile faded as he met Elon's gaze. "You never understood, did you? I was never trying to destroy the world. I was trying to reshape it. We can make humanity more powerful than ever before, Elon. You were too scared to see the potential. Now, it's too late." Before Elon could respond, Lucas activated the emergency lockdown system, sealing the doors and preventing the team from reaching the control console. "Damn it!" Mark shouted, banging on the glass. "He's locking us out. We've got to stop him now." The cold, sterile walls of the control room echoed with the clattering of footsteps as the team rushed to the sealed door. Lucas had locked them in, and the countdown continued on the monitors above, ticking down relentlessly. Every second felt like an eternity. "Elon, we can't just stand here," Mark said, his voice rising in frustration. "We need to find a way to override the lock." Elon's eyes scanned the room. The hum of the machinery, the quiet beeps from the control panels, and the ever-present countdown were all a constant reminder that they were running out of time. His mind raced with possible solutions, but each one seemed to lead to a dead end. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. They had no choice but to confront Lucas and stop him once and for all. "Mark, see if you can access the backup systems," Elon said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside. "I'll go after Lucas." Mark nodded and immediately moved to the console, fingers flying over the keys as he worked on a potential bypass. Meanwhile, Elon turned and started toward the main control center. The door had been locked, but there had to be a way in. He was determined to stop Lucas before the countdown hit 0. Inside the control center, Lucas was calm, almost eerily so. He stood by the console, his eyes glued to the screens, watching the gravitational feedback loops as they grew more intense. A twisted smile spread across his face as he saw the panic unfolding in the control room behind the glass. He had one. "You can't stop it, Elon," Lucas said without turning. "This is the future. The world doesn't need your limited vision. It needs to evolve. And I'm the one who's going to make that happen." Elon's voice was hard as he stepped closer. "You're not evolving anything, Lucas. You're destroying the world." Lucas turned around, meeting Elon's gaze with cold indifference. "It's already too late for that, don't you see? You and your team were never going to get it right. This system, this technology, it's too powerful for someone like you to control. But I know how to unlock its true potential. By killing everyone?" Elon shot back, his anger rising. "This is madness, Lucas." The countdown continued, a deafening reminder of the stakes. Lucas' smile faded as he stepped toward the main console. He flicked a switch, and suddenly, the entire station was plunged into darkness. The emergency lights kicked on, but the full control panel was offline. "Elon, do you really think you can fix this?" Lucas' voice echoed from the shadows. "You can't. No one can." Elon felt his heart race as the lights flickered back on. He was running out of time. His mind searched for a solution, any way to stop Lucas from unleashing this chaos on the world. As he advanced further into the room, he noticed something on the side, a hidden access panel to the control console. Without wasting a second, Elon rushed to the panel, pulling it open to reveal a series of cables and connectors. He immediately recognized the secondary override circuit. If he could access this, he might be able to trigger a manual shutdown, bypassing Lucas's sabotage. "Mark, I found the override. Can you assist?" Elon yelled, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "On it," Mark responded, his voice strained. Through the intercom, Mark began issuing commands to override the locked system, trying to access the auxiliary controls Elon had discovered. As Mark worked, Elon continued to fight against the clock, desperate to keep the mission alive. He needed to finish this, not just for SpaceX, not just for humanity, but for the future they had all envisioned. And for his team. Back in the control room, Mark was frantically typing commands. It's a delicate process, Elon, but we're getting there. If I can unlock the bypass, you'll have a direct line to override Lucas's security. Don't waste any more time. Elon snapped. The pressure of the situation was overwhelming. Every second counted. Elon's hands moved quickly as he began connecting the cables, bypassing Lucas's tampered systems. He knew it was risky. If he made one wrong move, everything could collapse. But there was no turning back now. Almost there. Mark's voice crackled through the intercom. The bypass is live. You're clear to access the system. With a deep breath, Elon pressed the final key. The control panels lit up, showing a new array of options. The countdown was at just under 2 minutes, and Lucas was still standing, watching with a sick sense of satisfaction. Elon faced him once more. You've lost, Lucas. It's over. But Lucas didn't flinch. You think you can stop me? You're too late. As the countdown hit the final seconds, Elon slammed his hand down on the key. The station's lights flickered back to full brightness, and the countdown stopped. The systems had reset. They had one. For a moment, everything was still. The world outside had not yet realized it, but the threat had been neutralized. The gravitational distortions were finally stabilizing, the catastrophic cascade of effects beginning to reverse. Lucas stood motionless, his mouth agape in disbelief. How? You underestimated us, Elon replied quietly, his voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and relief. It's over. The security personnel moved in to apprehend Lucas as he made no move to resist. He had no more tricks left. Elon collapsed into a nearby chair, his body finally allowing him to relax after the tension that had been building for hours. Mark and the team gathered around him, each of them wearing a look of disbelief mixed with exhaustion. We did it, Mark said softly, still processing everything that had happened. Against all odds, we actually did it. Elon nodded, his gaze fixed on the screens as they showed the Earth stabilizing. The storm had passed, but he knew this victory was just one chapter in a much longer story. Yeah, Elon said, his voice a little hoarse. But it's not over. This was just the beginning. The air inside the control room felt thinner now, the weight of their victory sinking in. The tremors that had once threatened to tear apart the world had now ceased. Slowly, as the planet's systems began to stabilize, a deep sense of calm filled the room. Outside, the storm had passed. Humanity had been spared, but at what cost? Elon stood at the center of the room, his eyes fixed on the monitors as they displayed a live feed of the Earth returning to normal. The gravitational shifts were being corrected, the intense weather patterns were calming, and the world, though shaken, was still intact. He felt a profound sense of relief, but also the growing realization that this wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning. Mark approached him, his face pale but relieved. We did it, Elon. We stopped him. The world is safe. Elon nodded slowly. Safe for now. For a moment, the room fell into silence. They had stopped Lucas from implementing his vision of an unstable, hyper-evolved world, but what would the future hold? They had barely scratched the surface of the potential dangers technology posed, especially when placed in the wrong hands. The battle with Lucas had been a wake-up call, but Elon knew the war wasn't over. The threat would always linger. We can't afford to rest on our laurels, Elon said, breaking the silence. We need to keep pushing forward. There are always people who will want to reshape the world to their advantage. It's up to us to make sure they don't get the chance again. Mark nodded in agreement. I understand, but we've just saved humanity from a global catastrophe. That's something we can be proud of. Elon smiled faintly. Pride is temporary, but the responsibility, that never goes away. Back in the control room, the team members worked quickly to regain full functionality of the satellite network, restoring communications and ensuring there were no lingering threats. It was a monumental task, but they were used to high-pressure situations. They'd been through the fire before, and this time, they had come out victorious. As the last of the systems came online, Elon turned his attention to the live feed from the satellites. He watched as the Earth stabilized, the weather calming, and the dangerous anomalies fading away. It was a miracle, a fragile one, but a miracle nonetheless. They had managed to prevent the catastrophe that could have sent humanity spiraling toward collapse. Elon glanced over to the far corner, where Lucas was being held by security personnel. His face was grim, his hands cuffed, but he didn't seem defeated. If anything, there was a look of resentment in his eyes. Elon knew the man wasn't done, not by a long shot. Lucas might have been arrested, but his ideas, his vision of what the future should be, would continue to haunt the world. Elon felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders once again. The future was fragile, and they had only delayed disaster for now. There was no going back to the old ways of thinking. Humanity had seen what could happen when technology was manipulated for selfish purposes, and it was up to those who understood its true potential to guide the world forward. We need to rebuild, Elon said, turning to Mark. Not just the systems, but the trust. The world can't go back to the way it was. Mark nodded. Agreed. People need to know that we can handle this kind of power. They need to see that we're committed to a better future, one where this kind of risk is mitigated before it's too late. Elon exhaled, rubbing his temples. It's not just about technology. It's about the people. If we can bring everyone together, engineers, scientists, leaders, then maybe we can create something truly revolutionary, something that no one person can control. A few hours later, they gathered in the debriefing room, a quiet space where they could regroup and start planning the next steps. Elon looked around the table, seeing the faces of those who had helped him avert disaster. They had all played their parts, and now it was time to take stock of what was left. First things first, Elon began. We need to ensure the satellites are up and running at full capacity. We can't afford another breakdown like that. Secondly, we need to launch an initiative to educate the world on the power and responsibility of technology. If we want to avoid future crises, it has to be a collective effort. We've got a long road ahead of us, Mark added, but I think we can make it. We've proven we can overcome the toughest challenges. Elon nodded. But we can't do it alone. This is bigger than any one person, any one company. We need a global approach, collaboration, innovation, and a deep respect for the power of what we've created. Elon's phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the screen, where a message from the President of the United States appeared. Elon, congratulations on averting the disaster. We've all seen the power of your technology. Let's discuss how we can ensure this never happens again. The world needs your vision now more than ever. Elon couldn't help but smile. The weight of responsibility had never felt so heavy, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could navigate the fine line between progress and peril. Later that evening, as Elon walked outside into the crisp, cold night, he took a deep breath, feeling the chill in the air. The sky above was clear, the stars twinkling in the vast expanse. It was a reminder that the universe was immense, and yet, humanity had the power to shape its future. He had seen the worst of human ambition, but he had also seen the best. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt a sense of peace. There was so much more to be done, so many challenges to face, but tonight, the world was safe. And that, for now, was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?